Leave a comment where you are listening in the world. Please subscribe if you enjoy our content. Enjoy. Another Tinder chick. We talked for a few times. The photos were small and blurry, but I got the basic idea. At least enough to set up a date since she lived about 10 blocks away. She was about 24 at the time, and I was 28. We meet at a bar, and while she isn't fat, she is more plump than her profile lead on, but all in all, not anywhere near as bad as some of the girls discussed here. I knew nothing was going to come of it, but had nothing else to do that night, so I figured I could have some drinks and hit the sack before midnight. Almost as soon as we met, she suggests we start taking shots of whiskey. This girl could drink. Over the course of a couple of hours, she probably had a half-dozen shots of whiskey and several mixed drinks. During the process, she liked to discuss how much she loved giving blowjobs and how slutty she was. I guess she had self-esteem issues, I dunno. I was plastered, like blind drunk, by the time we are ready to leave. I don't remember going to my apartment, but I remember we ended up on my couch with a movie on as I faded in and out of consciousness, and she raided my liquor cabinet. What happens next would have landed me in jail if the roles were reversed. First, I wake up to her on my lap. She is sitting facing away from me, grinding her, still in dress and panties, crotch against my jeans and stumbling about during the process. Then things go black again. I wake up again, and this time it is to a blowjob. I might have been drunk, but I remember a good blowjob, and this chick was giving a great deep throat, gagging blowjob like only a drunk girl and her porn star can. Then things go black again. I wake up again, and now she has my pants around my knees. She had removed her panties and squatting over me, fucking me with no condom. I remember being totally freaked out by that, but not as freaked out as when she removed her bra and a dusting of dead skin fell out of the cups and onto my black shirt. I literally threw her off of me as I stood up and ran to the bathroom with my pants around my ankles, puking my guts out into the toilet. When I got back from the bathroom, I was slightly sobered up, and she was sitting on the couch masturbating. She asked if we could finish fucking, and I said no, but she could finish me with a blowjob if she wanted to. I honestly don't remember if I came or not, because I passed out again. When I woke up the next morning, she was gone, and I never replied to another one of her TXT or Tinder messages again. A little over a year ago, my girlfriend, Charlotte, died in a car crash. A drunk driver hit her head-on while she was driving home after dropping off some friends from a college party. She wasn't drunk, she was the designated driver. Her small Toyota Camry didn't stand a chance against the huge 18-wheeler that was on the wrong side of the highway. By the time the police got there, her car was on fire, and she was burned so badly that they couldn't even recognize her. The guy who hit her had a BAC of .13. He's in prison for life, but that doesn't change anything. Charlotte is gone, and I'll never see her again. The only thing that survived the crash, besides the guy who killed her, was the bracelet I gave her for our 4-year anniversary. It was half of a rose gold heart with her initials on it, and mine was the other half. Her family buried it with her, so she'd always have a piece of me with her. A year later, I finished college, got a job, and moved into my first place. But I was still stuck, still trying to make sense of what happened. It felt so unfair. Charlotte wasn't even a big drinker, and she was always super careful when driving. And yet a drunk driver was what took her life. It made no sense. But at some point, I realized that no matter how much I thought about it, I'd never get the answers I wanted. Thinking about it over and over wasn't going to bring her back. Then one night, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. I wanted someone. I hadn't dated or even thought about sex since Charlotte died. It just didn't feel right. But now, for the first time, I felt like maybe I was ready. But with that feeling came guilt. Guilt that I was thinking about moving on. Guilt that I wanted romance again. That I was even considering meeting someone new. At first I wanted to push those thoughts away, but then I asked myself, was I just hiding behind my grief? Was I using Charlotte's death as an excuse to avoid the risk of falling in love again? I decided to take it slow. No serious relationships, just something casual. I'd never used a dating app before, but I figured it might be the easiest way to start. That same night, while I was looking into dating apps, I got a random email about one called Curio. It said, "Welcome to Curio. Are you curious to meet that special someone? Click the link below to download our free dating app." I'd never heard of it before, but I knew about Tinder and Bumble, so I thought, why not? I clicked the link, which took me to the App Store. The icon was a black square with a strange red C in the center. I downloaded it, then started setting up my profile, name, age, basic info. Then I had to pick some pictures. I spent about 10 minutes scrolling through my camera roll, trying to find the best ones. That's when I came across old photos of Charlotte and me, pictures I'd completely forgotten about. There was one of us on spring break in Cancun, wearing straw hats and leis. Another of us kissing in front of the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. And one of us in matching USA t-shirts during a Beer Olympics game. The Cancun picture hit me the hardest. That night we got ridiculously drunk and started calling ourselves the Tequila Twins. After that, every time we drank together, we'd joke, "The Tequila Twins are back at it again." I stared at those pictures for a long time. It felt like a different life, like someone else's memories. But they were mine. And no matter what happened next, no matter who I met, I knew I'd always carry those moments with me. I didn't want to get emotional, so I distracted myself by taking a few selfies for my profile. After that, I started swiping through the app. Most of the girls were kinda average, nothing special. I kept swiping left until I got bored and decided to try again tomorrow. It was late, and I had work in the morning. The next day I got a notification from Curio. "Congratulations, you have a new match." That was weird because I didn't even remember swiping right on anyone. But I was super tired last night, so maybe I did it by accident. Curious, I clicked on the notification. When I saw the profile, my stomach dropped. The girl looked exactly like Charlotte. Same name, same age, same pictures. My face burned with anger. Who the hell makes a fake profile of someone who's dead? I was about to message them, but they beat me to it. "Hey!" I typed back fast. "Whoever you are, delete this profile now. This isn't funny. What kind of sick freak does this?" "Cam, it's me. Char." My hands started shaking. My heart pounded. Sweat dripped down my forehead. "Stop this. Right now." But I miss my tequila twin. My breath got caught in my throat. My ears were ringing. "Who are you?" "Cam, it's me. Char. Please talk to me, babe." I slammed the app shut. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. Before I knew it, I was running late for work. I threw on clothes and rushed out, trying to convince myself this was just some awful joke. I was 10 minutes late, and my manager, Big Ted, was pissed. "This is the second time this month, Cameron. Don't let it happen again," he snapped. "Yes, sir." I mumbled, heading to my desk. Rob, my coworker, leaned over. "Don't take it personally, man. Ted's just extra mad cause of the divorce." I scoffed. "Isn't this like his third wife?" "Fourth," Rob corrected. "First one cheated, second got deported, third OD'd, and this one was just sick of his crap. God, I hate corporate jobs." I sighed while opening my laptop. "Hey, you ever heard of this dating app called Curio? Now I'm more of a Tinder guy, but now I'm Curio. Get it? Curious?" Rob grinned. I chuckled half-heartedly while checking my work email. But then I saw something that made my blood go cold. A new message. From Curio. How did this app even get my work email? I hesitated before clicking. It was a picture. Of my back porch. There was a note. "The new place looks great without me. We were supposed to move in together. Left a little gift at your door since you don't want to talk to me anymore." My heart started hammering. My hands felt numb. I tripped over my chair, struggling to breathe. Rob rushed over. "Dude, are you okay?" I gotta go." I grabbed my jacket and bolted out of the office. The drive home felt like it took forever. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my heart was racing, and all I wanted was to be anywhere but here. I grabbed an old baseball bat from my trunk and slowly walked up to my front porch. The door was still locked, which was a relief. Still, I checked every room in my house to make sure no one was there. Everything looked just like I left it. Nothing was missing. I let out a deep breath and laughed a little. Was I really letting some internet troll freak me out this much? My location was on in the app. They could have easily found my address on Google Maps, taken a screenshot of my porch, and sent it to mess with me. That had to be it. Feeling a little stupid, I locked up and left for work. But as I stepped onto the back porch, I heard a light crunch under my foot. I lifted my shoe and saw something shiny stuck to it. I picked it up and my heart dropped. It was a rose gold bracelet with half of a heart pendant. The initials CC were carved into it. I looked down at my wrist. My bracelet. The other half of the pendant was still there. I never took it off, not since the funeral. I fit the two pieces together. A perfect heart. I dropped the bracelet back on the doormat and rushed to my car, tears burning my eyes. My hands were shaking as I yanked out my phone and furiously typed. "Tell me who the hell this is. Right now." The reply came instantly. Cam, why are you mad at me? Sad face. I miss you so much. Is this how you treat your girlfriend? This isn't funny. I'm reporting you. I reported the account for a fake identity, unmatched the user, and deleted the app from my phone. Then I just sat there in my car crying. I pulled myself together and went back to work. Luckily, Big Ted was gone for the rest of the day, so I didn't get in trouble for leaving earlier. By the time I got home, I was exhausted. I crashed on the couch and passed out for a few hours. I woke up to my phone ringing. It was Rob. I yawned and picked up. Hey man, what's up? Yo Cam, hope I'm not bothering you. Just wanted to ask about that dating app you told me about. I stretched and rubbed my eyes. Curio. Curio. There was a short pause. I heard Rob typing. Huh, that's weird. What? I can't find it. You sure that's how you spell it? Yeah, it's Curio. Well, it's not showing up. Maybe my phone's just old. No worries. See you tomorrow. After we hung up, curiosity got the best of me. I searched for Curio on Google. Nothing. No website, no reviews, no mention of it anywhere. That didn't make sense. I had downloaded it. I had emails from them. Maybe deleting the app was the best thing I could have done. I went to bed thinking I was done with it. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. Curio was back on my phone, and I had a new match. I tapped the alert and froze when I saw who it was. Charlotte. Again. How? I whispered. A video message popped up. My stomach twisted as I opened IT. That IT was dark and grainy, but I could tell what I was looking at. My bedroom. Someone was filming me. The camera moved closer until the phone's light shined on my face as I slept. Under the video was a message. You're so handsome when you sleep, winky face. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a mistake. I had to go to the police. I sped to the station before work, stormed up to the front desk, and slammed my phone down in front of 2 officers. Someone is stalking me. They're pretending to be my dead girlfriend on a dating app. The officers exchanged confused looks. Slow down, son, one said. What's your name? What app are we talking about? Cameron Hill. The app is called Curio. Curio. My girlfriend, Charlotte Campbell, died last year, and someone is pretending to be her. They know where I live. They've sent pictures of my house, videos of me sleeping. I unlocked my phone and opened the app to show them. They squinted at the screen. Then one of them chuckled. You ever try Tinder, kid? I didn't laugh. The grin slid off his face. This was real, and I was on my own. Yeah, I don't know what's up with this app, but it keeps freezing and crashing before I can even see anything, said the other officer, a slightly better-looking version of his partner. You probably don't have much to worry about, though. These cyberbullying cases usually turn out to be a bunch of punks messing around. I narrowed my eyes. Cyberbullying? Sir, with all due respect, I believe I'm being stalked. Hunted. The officer sighed. Look, kid, if you get any more threats, you know where to find us. I glared at them both, then snatched my phone and stormed out. A complete waste of time. By the time I got to work, I was 5 minutes late. Big Ted noticed. You're so fucking unqualified for this job. It's not even funny, he snapped. If it weren't for your rich daddy buying your way into life, you'd be on the streets. You bring nothing to this company. Stop showing up late. I clenched my jaw, forcing a calm response. Yes, sir. Won't happen again. The day dragged on, but at least it ended. I got home, collapsed onto the couch, and immediately passed out, only to wake up a few hours later to a notification from Curio. It's been 3 days, Cam. I miss you so much, uneasy face. Can we please meet up tonight? My fingers flew over the screen. I don't know who you are, but Charlotte Campbell, the person you're pretending to be, is dead. Gone. Buried at St. Agatha's Cemetery, miles away. Leave me alone. I exhaled sharply and rubbed my temples. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. The message was different this time. Colder. You have until 9 p.m. tonight to find me, or I'll drag you to hell with me. A chill ran down my spine. My pulse thundered. I had to get answers. I searched Google for Curio again. Nothing. I checked my email. The sender was anonymous, unreachable. I even tried replying, but the message bounced back as invalid. Then I noticed something. At the bottom of the original email, the one advertising Curio was fine print. If your curiosity is fulfilled, please pass this message along to another friend who lost a lover. We're here to piece love back together. I stared at it, trying to make sense of it. By the end of the night, though, I had a feeling I wouldn't be hearing from Charlotte again. I woke up the next morning. Alive. Not in hell. I checked my phone. No notifications. No messages from Curio. No emails. The app itself had been completely erased. It was as if it had never existed. At work things were different. Big Ted was in a strangely good mood. He even apologized. I shouldn't have said those things, Cam. We have to hold on tight to the people who are there for us. Never take them for granted. Then, the next day, he was gone. No formal goodbye. No resignation. Big Ted disappeared. It's been months, and no one has seen him since. I've moved to a different town, found a different job. I'm happier now. I even met someone new, without the help of dating apps. But if you ever get an email about an app called Curio, do not download it. Do what the fine print says. Pass it along. I live in a big city and matched with a girl who lived way out in the suburbs. She wanted to meet downtown in the city and asked me to choose a place. She had fairly strict dietary requirements, but I found a good place that has 2 or 3 locations in the city. It wasn't anything like Olive Garden, but since this is about nightmares, let's say it was an Olive Garden. I sent her a text something like, "Let's meet at the Olive Garden on Main Street near City Hall." She agrees. The night of the date arrives. She, however, does not. She calls and says she's looking for parking. I'd had no idea she'd be driving into the city. No one I interact with in the city owns a car, and there's good train service from her suburb, but whatever. I look up parking garages for her, but she keeps saying she can't find them. I finally ask her to read me a street sign. Turns out she's halfway across the city. I'm confused, and tell her I'm downtown like we'd planned. She gets angry and says I sent her a link to the restaurant, so that's where she went. I was pretty confused, since I had never sent a link. Then I figured it out. Her phone had done that thing where it underlines the name of a business and turns it into a link. But it had chosen some other random Olive Garden nowhere near Main Street or City Hall, and she had mindlessly assumed it was the only Olive Garden in the entire huge city, even though it was nowhere near where I had described. Red flag number 1. Getting angry at me about it and blaming me, red flag number 2. But I am too nice for my own good, so I offered to go meet her at the other Olive Garden. She says no, she'll park and get a taxi. She finds it extremely difficult to find the restaurant even with the exact address in Google Maps. She apparently cannot communicate well enough with the taxi driver to get him to understand the address. Red flags numbers 3 and 4. She finally arrives, and I've ordered her food that fits all her dietary restrictions. She likes her dinner, and we have cordial but boring conversation. She gets a hankering for tea, so I take her to a really nice tea place. I suggest a scenic walk back to her car. She agrees. The walk is scenic, but the conversation is boring, stilted, and hard to maintain. Red flag number 5. I see her to her car, and she goes cold and doesn't really look at me or say goodbye when she leaves. I get the strong impression she was just faking enjoying my company during the walk and is now relieved the date is over. Fair enough. By this point I felt the same way, although I was being more polite about it. Red flag number 6, but who cares at this point? Neither one of us appears interested in a second date whatsoever, so no big deal. I sigh with relief, text her good night, and move on with my life. 2 days later, she texts me saying it was very rude of me not to reach out again. I tell her I got the impression she didn't want to hear from me. She texts, "You're wrong." Okay. She asks if I'd like a second date, and I politely explain that it was nice meeting her, but I don't think we really had much of a connection. She gets pissed. Over the next few hours, with few replies from me, she berates me for sending her to the wrong restaurant, and demands that I pay for A, her taxi, B, her gas, C, her tolls, and D, her parking. She sends me a Venmo account. I'm too nice for my own good, so I say that I will pay for the taxi, since I did choose the place, even though I did specify where it was, and she ignored that information. I Venmo her the taxi money, but say sorry, I didn't even know you'd be driving to our date, so I'm not going to pay for your gas, tolls, or parking. She repeatedly insults me over this, and says I forced her to incur these costs. In fact, I had said several times that we didn't have to meet downtown if somewhere else was more convenient, and she'd always said it was fine. She ends by saying she's going to call my employer and tell them how I treat people. So yeah, stupidity, entitlement, zero chemistry, and blackmail. Not a great date. Definitely too late, but this was very recent, and I feel like sharing it somewhere as I don't like telling people around me that I use Tinder. So I matched with this guy, your average surfer boy. Seemed like a kind person, and everything we shared socials quite fast, and I noticed he had a Jesus reference going on top of his longish hair, and I thought that was kind of cute. He kept asking to meet, and I remind you this was already during the COVID-19 social distancing thing going on. So I politely declined, and he didn't seem to get it, and every time I declined, he would make a more aggressive remark, kind of hinting at what was to come. He kept saying, "Oh, it's a joke, it's fake news, it's bullshit, blah blah blah," and I shrugged it off first. On his Instagram story, I saw he had posted something about this far-right conspiracy theory, and telling people to wake up. He bragged about how he was deliberately ignoring the safety guidelines in every way possible. I was getting uncomfortable. Interestingly, the whole far-right conspiracy thing didn't bother me that much. I've grown up in a right-wing environment, and have become desensitized to all that stuff, and can generally accept other people's opinions as long as they don't actively treat other people like crap. But this whole narrative he had going on that he didn't believe in a confirmed freaking epidemic because of some silly conspiracy theory, and chose to ignore safety procedures, and with that putting other people at risk, freaked me out. So he asked me, again, to come and meet him on a Friday night. He downright invited me to his home with some friends for a drinking game night. I was definitely not having that, so I told him I was not leaving the house at the moment. He said fair enough. The day after, he seemed completely oblivious about what I had explained to him the night before, and asked again, like literally every day, "Do you want to do something?" And I just thought to myself, he really isn't seeing that this is serious, so I asked him about it. And he started ranting about how much bullshit this thing was, so I told him my brother had contracted it, and he was trying to tell me it's fake. Okay, fair enough. So I tried asking for proof, albeit I was absolutely not going to believe a word he was saying, as I had already lost all respect I had left for him. So he went on a xenophobic, anti-Semitic rage. I sat there, just laughing, even though it was just sad. It's funny to see these people taking themselves so seriously, and they are so far up their own asses with their delusions. It's like talking to a brick wall, so I let him rant for a few moments. Let the kid pour it out before he writes a manifesto and plans a terror attack right. But when he started calling me a snowflake, assuming that I was just believing everything the media was feeding me, that's when I'd had enough. I'm studying philosophy and psychology, so this was a very interesting encounter for me to observe, though not very pleasant. I asked him a row of very valid questions, like in what way he deemed himself of being better believing in these stupid conspiracy theories than people buying everything the mass media feeds them, and then he started getting really defensive. I hit his weak toxic masculine spot, and that's when he went on a sexist rampage, telling me I deserved to get raped. I have no clue where that came from. That was the final straw for me, though. I do not tolerate men condoning rape, so I told him that it was an interesting encounter, that I was sorry for him, he was too far gone, that I no longer wished to be talking to a brick wall, and that I hoped for him to learn how to think for himself. That because he told everyone to open their eyes and question things and think. Well, truth be told, most people never learn how to properly think. It's an odd thought, but sadly true. I told him when he tried to prove one of his silly theories with another silly theory, congrats, he could read some stupid theory, check if it fits into his agenda, and then interpret it accordingly. I call it the bias check. That is the first step of taking up information. Now all he needed was to learn to actually think for himself, and that is something you don't learn if you aren't challenged philosophically in one way or another. Anyway, I blocked him. Thank God I didn't meet up with him. I can say COVID may have saved my life. Plenty of fish story here. So this girl starts messaging me. She says she thinks I'm interesting, handsome, wants to meet up. She's attractive and seems like she has her life in order, going to college for business / not living at home. So we meet up and go to P.F. Chang's. Good conversation, though she awkwardly comments on how handsome I am, and then proceeds to draw our waitress into that conversation, asking her, "Wow, isn't he handsome?" Okay, whatever, I don't mind my ego being stroked, and it is our first date. We finish up, get ice cream, and she pitches the idea of watching a movie back at my place. I say okay, and she follows me back to my apartment. We get upstairs, pick out a movie, and as I'm getting it going, she looks me dead in the eye and tells me she's not hooking up with me and she doesn't sleep with people on the first date. I laughed and told her that's fine with me. Let's just chill and watch the movie. Well, 15 minutes into this movie, this girl is all over me. Not 15 minutes ago this girl is telling me nothing's going to happen, and is now shoving her tongue down my throat and pulling me into my bedroom. The sex is great, and she is a squirter, which was new for me, but no complaints. She spends the night, even waking me up later in the morning with a blowjob in round 2. The morning comes, I figure she'll find her way out. My roommate was there, but in his wow phase, but at least he was there, and I head to work. I come home, walk up the stairs, and find her talking to my roommate. I'm surprised she's still there. I shrug it off, I make dinner. We eat and again, have ourselves some hot sex. The morning comes, I get up, head to work. At work, I message my roommate, asking if she's left. He says he doesn't know. I come home, and lo and behold, she's sitting on my couch watching TV. I gave her a look. The kind of look that says, "Why are you still here?" She looks at me sheepishly and says, "I skipped class today and decided to just chill here." Before I can really think it over, she starts pulling me into the bedroom, and of course another evening goes by. Despite the hot sex and her being very attractive, I have a scene she is slowly digging her claws into me. I also realize that we actually have very little in common, and our conversations have little substance. The morning comes and I again head off to work. She's still asleep as I go to work at 6:30. I send her a message a little later telling her I'm having fun, but this is going too fast and I need some space. Note she's now been at my place for 3 full days and is now wearing my clothes. She doesn't respond. I come back from work and there she is again, sitting watching TV on the couch. I look at her and she at me. I flat out tell her, "Alright, it's time to go." She gave me this wounded look and I told her this was getting weird for me, and while I've had a good time, I need some time for myself. She then proceeded to drag her feet, getting changed into her original first date clothes, all the while telling me how she thinks I'm perfect, and she wants to stay here with me, and on and on and on. So I basically put up with it long enough to escort her to her car, which was parked around the building in my complex, and I see it's loaded with shit, like personal items, boxes, etc. At this point, I just want to see her drive away, and she's still trying to convince me to let her stay. I'm like, "Nope, but I'll be in touch." So she finally leaves, but for the next 2 weeks is messaging me about being together, getting married, all that. I find out she isn't in college, but taking some BS online program, and is sleeping on her friend's couch. I wished her success and happiness, and then blocked her. Not me directly, but a flatmate I used to live with, let's call her Abby. This is kind of 2 stories in one, so stay with me. Sitting comfortable? Then I shall begin. Abby, who since I had shared a flat with had not had much luck in the love department. Some her own fault, some not. However, she was a lovely girl, and a great sense of humor, and sweet as anything. She was single as was I, and we decided one night to go to a speed date event, where she ended up matching with this guy. Let's call Steve. Steve was actually really nice, and he used to come over for dinner, play Xbox, and him and Abby seemed pretty good together. He worked as a sales rep, and his work decided they needed to send him abroad. This was for 2 weeks, and at which time it was Abby's birthday party. They had been seeing each other for about 2 months at this point. Steve was gutted he would miss it, but said he would ring, etc., and that morning he did, and all was good. Abby had a gathering at our local pub/club, which was great. Loads of her friends turned up, and strangely one of her ex-boyfriends was working behind the bar. I knew him from before I moved in with her, and he was one of those cool sly cats that would, and could talk his way in and out of any situation. Several hours go by and Abby has had a great time, clearly very merry, and I too am feeling the drink by this time. So I head home with Abby, which is only a few minutes walk. We get in and say night, and wish her a happy birthday, and up I go to bed. Next day I come downstairs and start making coffee, and I hear the front door open and shut. I go out to look, and I don't see anyone there. Abby appears in the lounge, and I assume she went out the front for some reason, and go to roll a cigarette, and go outside myself. I think nothing of it, and the rest of the 2 weeks go by, and during this Abby is clearly missing Steve. Cut to Saturday, Steve is back and they go out to dinner. He has bought her roses for her birthday, yada yada yada, and clearly he has missed her a lot. I hear them come home after dinner and disappear off to her room. I venture off to my own room and start watching a movie and on the PC. About half an hour passes, and suddenly I hear shouting downstairs. I go out and they are arguing. He's saying he is so upset with her and that he cannot believe she would do this to him. He leaves and she's on the stairs crying. I go down and ask her what's wrong and what's happened. Turns out they had come home and gone to bed, and while Steve was fingering her he felt something and pulled out a used condom, which had been inside her for 11 days. Let that sink in for a few seconds. 11 days. No surprises who the owner was either, the ex from her birthday party. Smooth Sly Jeff and his sly shaft. She admitted she remembers him turning up at the door. She hadn't gone straight to bed, so she was still up, and she let him in as he had brought drinks with him. They stayed up chatting, and he had given her a present. She does remember saying he can stay over on the couch as it was late, but somehow they ended upstairs. Then she remembers him kissing her, which led them to having sex, consensual. She felt terrible, but as it was a big mistake and she thought she could hide it. Clearly not. We never saw Steve again, sadly. Nice guy, and Abby regrets it completely. Only human, I guess. Now the second part is a few months later. She decided Match.com would be her ticket to a new man. She was soon flooded with matches and decided to go on a date with this guy who we will call Romeo. Before she went, I was giving her advice, the usual be yourself stuff, and she went and had a great time by all accounts of the loud sex that was happening in the house later that night. The next morning she came down to the kitchen, and I asked if all was good, and she said she was happy, and she had found the one. I felt she was a little off for thinking this, first date, but she had had the bad breakup before this, so I thought she was just catching feelings early and getting caught up in the moment. She goes off for a shower, and I'm still making breakfast. Cue Romeo walking in, and without missing a beat, he says he's leaving now, and to tell her it was fun. I asked why he was going now, and that Abby would only be a few minutes. His reply was, "My wife will be home shortly. Need to get home before she does." At this point I bit my tongue and he left. Abby came down after getting dressed and asked where Romeo was. I questioned her about him and what had happened. He never told her he was married, and to top it off they hadn't used protection. Didn't even get his mobile number either, which made tracking him down impossible when she found out she had contracted a nasty STD and was pregnant. His profile disappeared from Match.com the day after he walked out. She did send a message to them, but heard nothing back. Sadly, she didn't make it to full term. I moved out about 2 years after, at which point she was happily with a new guy. Everyone feels lonely sometimes. For me, last night struck a little harder than usual. I'm not sure why it did, but it led to me downloading Tinder. When irrational thoughts get to you, you start to think of irrational solutions to your problem. I figured I would get on Tinder and swipe the night away, as it seemed like the easiest fix for my problem. I have always believed that dating apps aren't made to pair you with a potential lover, but rather to make you feel insecure, so you spend more time on the app. Because of this, I was surprised to find a girl called Jessica had liked me back within 10 minutes of me using the app. I felt like she was fake at first, but I'd rather find out than contemplate about the possibility, so I texted her. She responded within a few minutes, and we started talking. What felt like minutes of talking had turned into hours. When I looked at the time, I was surprised to see that it was 1 a.m., so I told her that I had to sleep because I had to wake up early for work in the morning, but that I'd love to text with her again. She replied, "Oh yeah, no problem. If you give me your phone number, we can get off this app," smiley face. Without hesitation, I gave her my phone number and went to sleep. I woke up and started the day as I usually do. I ate breakfast, took a shower, brushed my teeth, and got on my way to work. I have worked for a newspaper for over 5 years, where I get to write about all types of things. Today I had to write about a man who went missing not too far from where I live. He was 2 years younger than me and lived alone. It's been 2 weeks since his disappearance, and the local authorities decided to use the newspaper in hopes someone would have more information. As I was finishing up the story about the missing person, I got a text message from the girl. She asked me how work was, and if I had anything to do that evening. I caught myself smiling at the text message and ridiculed myself for already being head over heels for this girl, despite not having met her in person. I always tend to get attached to people too quickly, which is usually why my relationships don't go as I would like them to. Because of this, I cursed my mind for feeling this way. I waited a few minutes before answering her text, because I felt like it would make me seem more mysterious and busier than I actually am. I'm not sure why, but I figured it would be better than replying within 5 seconds. "Yeah, I'm free. Getting off from work soon. What do you have in mind?" I sent the message and went back to finish the news article. Once I had finished it, I sent it to my boss for confirmation and left work for the day. When I looked at my phone, she replied to my message. "How about you come over to my place in an hour? We can chat and have some fun." Without hesitation, I quickly opened the chat and replied, completely disregarding my previous strategy. "That sounds great. I'll be on my way soon." A few minutes after that, she sent me her address, which was not far from where I lived. It's about a 15-minute walk. As I made my way to her house, I was imagining all the possible situations that might occur any conversations we might have, and what the best responses would be. I arrived at her house 10 minutes earlier than she said, but being early is usually considered a good thing. I knocked on the door of her house and waited for a little bit, but got no response. I grabbed my phone and told her I was at her house. While waiting for a response, I decided to look around the house to see if maybe I could see her through one of the windows. I made my way to the back of her house and quickly found myself standing in the garden. Standing in the garden, I immediately noticed something odd. It seemed like she had done some digging a few days ago. I figured she had tiles in her garden, which she decided to remove. Before I had the chance to think about it any longer, I heard her voice yell at me from a window above me. "Oh hey, you're already here. Let me open the door." I waved at her awkwardly and was startled by her sudden appearance. I quickly regained my composure and made my way back to the front door, where I was met with her beautiful smile and a gesture for me to come in. "You want something to drink?" she asked. Some water would be great, thanks," I replied awkwardly. I forgot how shy I can get around people when it's not over text. It's a whole different experience for me. I could tell she picked up on it, and she was amazing when it came to talking to people, because she managed to make me feel at ease quickly. She handed me my drink, and we started talking like we had the night before, the only difference being that this was face to face. After talking for a bit, I asked her if I could use the bathroom. "There's one right down the hall," she said, pointing to the general direction. I stood up and made my way to where she was pointing. While living in Sydney, Australia, I used Tinder. I went on a date with a Danish girl called Lena. We met in a cool wee bar in the oldest part of Sydney. We had several drinks there, and we were getting on really well. I settled our tab, and we moved into the next bar. We went to a pretty grubby Irish bar. At the bar she asked me what I would like, and I had a bottle of beer. She ordered herself a double JD and Coke. Face with raised eyebrow when the bill came this round was apparently also on me, which was my first alarm bell. We proceeded to sit in a quiet spot down the back of the bar so that we could chat a bit more when I found myself being kissed. This went on for a while until she asked if we could sit closer to the front of the bar. We sat next to two guys who were popping in and out for a smoke. She then joined them for a smoke and left me looking after the table. A few minutes passed, and they came back and she was sitting opposite me, and we chatted for a bit longer, until I noticed that her foot was in the crotch of the guy sitting next to me. I gasped, "What are you doing, Lena? We were on a date." She responded she was European and was only being friendly. I quickly replied that I was European too and we're not that friendly. The guy got uncomfortable and went outside. She assured me that she liked me and there was nothing going on, so the date continued. We chatted a bit more until she went out for a smoke and then came back. Getting up for a smoke and chatting to other guys continued for a while. I decided to leave. I got up, went to the bathroom, put my jacket and hat on, and was about to leave, but I decided to stay, and I can't explain why. While I was waiting, a group of girls arrived, and I instantly recognized one of them. We had matched on Tinder and chatted for a while, but she ghosted me. When they sat down beside me, they asked for a chair, but I said it was my date's seat. They asked where she was, and I pointed to the Lena chatting to another fella. My Tinder girl came over to me and asked if I recognized her, and I explained I did, and had wondered why she stopped chatting with me. She told me that because I was Irish, she didn't want to get involved in case I was a tourist, which I guess is understandable. Next thing, she jumps onto my knee and starts to kiss me, and suddenly I feel a tap 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 on my shoulder. There is a huge guy looming over me, bearing in mind I'm 6 foot tall and 100 kilograms. "You're supposed to be on a date with this girl," and he points to Delina across the bar, looking very miffed. I responded, "I know that's what I thought too, but I haven't seen her this past hour." He shrugged and left me to it. My new Tinder girl and I swapped numbers, and we dated for a short while, and the funniest part was she was called Lena too. While living in London, I met a girl on Tinder in one of the cool old pubs in central London. We had a fantastic date. It felt like we both really opened up and got to know each other. We had lived similar lives up to that point. The night went on, and we had a bit much to drink. She came back to my flat for a nightcap. I think we maybe opened a bottle of wine or a beer and pretty much went to bed. I think she may have been surprised that I wasn't the kind of guy to sleep with someone on a first date. I woke up in the middle of the night with this person on top me and sleeping with me. I pushed her off and asked what on earth she was thinking. I let her stay the remainder of the night, and the next morning, she claimed to have no memory of the incident. We didn't see each other again after that. I had taken a break from dating for a while living in London, as I'm sure you're aware it becomes a bit much. But I had added and deleted the dating apps over the few months leading up to my deletion. On a Thursday evening I decided to give it a go again. I matched with a girl that I seemed to regularly matched with. It was a bit of joke to her that I kept popping up and then disappearing, and she told me this on the Friday. So after some pestering I agreed to meeting with her, but I regularly cycled to work and explained that as it was impromptu I'd be in my PE kit. We decided to meet a wee pub near my work and close to where she lived. A close friend had been texting me during the day and trying to get me to come out for a drink with her, but I hadn't got back them, which they felt was a bit odd behavior. I had a great night getting to know this girl, and we got on really well. We ended up having a bit much to drink, and I couldn't cycle home, so she let me stay on her sofa. When I checked my phone on the morning, I had countless missed calls from my friend, my sister, and an anonymous number, with multiple text messages asking where I was. I called my friend to let her know I was all right, and she explained that she was with the police, and they were looking for me as I had been reported as a missing person. My friend panicked and contacted my sister to see if she had heard from me. As my sister hadn't, they decided it was for the best to report me as missing in case I'd be knocked down on my bike. So myself and my new friend waited in a local cafe to prove to police I was alive, well, and in fact not missing. This was before Tinder, dating on Craigslist. Spoke to a girl for a bit. She's into movies and hasn't seen one I have, so the plan is for her to come over to watch. So I drive to get her, and she lives in the worst ghetto I've ever been in. I try to text her that I'm outside, but I get some error message that I can't text a landline. As I'm calling her, some other car on the street in front of me starts honking for his buddy, and takes off right as this girl comes out her front door. The first thing she asks, kinda pissed off, is if I was honking for her. Not a great start, but I convince her it isn't me and GTFO of the ghetto as fast as possible. Driving to my place, we pass a bus stop, and she leans out the window to shout at some people she recognized that she was in a car. We get to my place, and I offer her some ice cream. She insists on boiling water and dunking my spoons in it before she eats from them. Weird, but whatever. We smoke and start the movie. Now my move back then was smooth. My TV was right in front of my queen-sized bed, and the only other place to sit was a single recliner. So we hop in bed, start watching the movie, and a few minutes later I make my move. She's down, so this is a done deal. Except it wasn't. She's on her back and still manages to get her tongue all the way to the back of my throat. I have no idea how she did it. So much tongue. Then she throws her arm up, and I am hit by the most offense BO I've ever smelled. It was like this girl was allergic to showers. Good Lord. And then the trifecta. A mouse is in the center of the room, watching me get tongue strangled by this smelly girl. I'm not a mouse guy, and I want to leave ASAP. All I can think about is all the traps and poison I need to buy, and what is open. I accidentally / on purpose drop a remote near the mouse to scare it away, and track where it runs off to. I back off her, and we finish the movie. The second it's over, I tell her I'll drive her home. She looks bummed, but I need to get out of my mouse palace. She asks if we can smoke again, and I agree just to get this over with. On the drive home, she's telling me how mad her mom is going to be when she comes home this late. She also tells me she's a nympho. I'm still thinking about that mouse, and I'm baked, so the thought of road head doesn't even cross my mind. If I thought her place was in a bad area when I picked her up, the ghetto at night showed me how bad it really is. The second she closed her door, I took off, and I instantly got lost. Not a great time to be high. I pulled up to a gas station to ask for directions. The lights were on, but no one was around, so I got out to go to the front door. Locked. Some car pulls into the lot behind me. So I'm pretty sure I'm about to get robbed and die, but thankfully it's a cab driver. He asks me what I'm doing, and I tell him I'm lost and looking for the highway. He just points. I jump in my car and take off that direction. I'm so happy to be leaving I don't pay good attention, and completely bottom out the car going over a curb out of the parking lot. It was loud. Did not sound good. The rest of the story is uneventful. Found the highway, slept at my aunt's, bought traps and poison, never talked to that girl again. The next girl I met online, I married 6 years later. Been together 13 this year. Another story to add. A couple of years ago, I had matched with the classic douche. All about his cars, tattoos, and believed weed was better than taking antidepressants. Well, he was hot, I was desperate for a good make-out session, and he messaged me one day striking a conversation. One thing led to another, and he convinced me to drive an hour and a half to see him. Like I said, I was desperate, and I was just glad I was getting any attention. We met up, he buys us pizza and ice cream, we make out, and then he tells me I can spend the night, which was nice, but I think you know where this is going. Fast forward a month later, and we are talking daily, but only on Snapchat. He seemed to only want to keep the stupid streak, and whenever I asked when we could see each other again, he would make some excuse that he was moving and didn't have time. One time I offered to help pack his things, and his excuse was, "I'll have to ask my landlord." What? I was young and dumb and missed affection, so I blew off every red flag. We finally saw each other once more, and it wasn't anything special. He was hanging with his friend the entire time, and I was bummed I made the trek there and back in the same day. It was a lot of driving for the lack of attention. Fast forward another month, and I completely cut him off. I don't reply to his snap, the streak ends, and we don't speak for a couple of weeks. Then one night my roommates and I drove down to his area to watch a Christmas parade. I had posted a pic with the name of the location as the filter, and lo, and behold, he messaged me because he saw I was on his area, and it was all about his convenience for sex. This pissed me off because I knew at this point he was just a douche who needed therapy, and I didn't need that toxic shit in my life. I replied very dryly and confronted him that he doesn't speak to me for weeks and refuses to hang out with me. But when I happen to be in his area, he acts like everything is fine. Well, this set him off, and he said, "LOL, not even gonna argue," and blocked me from everything. Things I didn't even follow him on. Fast forward about a month later, and I was telling my friend about the ordeal, and she decided to stalk him. We find out he has been in a relationship with a girl for months. Like, before he and I even started talking. Like, during the time we hooked up. Like, during the time he messaged me again asking to hang out. If you're wondering, yes. I did message the girl and told her in a nice but stern way about how I had been seeing him. I apologized and had no idea, of course, and she replied with a simple thumbs up. A week later, we saw he was single again. When I look back, there were so many red flags that he was in the relationship. He only messaged me using Snapchat, not text, so it's easy to delete evidence. He had posted a pic of him at the gym one time wearing a weird handkerchief around his neck, but I realize now he was just hiding his hickeys I gave him. And he didn't want to hang out because, of course, he had a girlfriend. So there's the story of my being the other woman because of a Tinder douche. So about 5 years ago, I got out of a hellish, sex-deprived, at the end, unfaithful relationship where my heart got broken. The second week after kicking her out, I wanted to start meeting girls/women for hookups, so I headed to Tinder. I go on a few dates, but nothing really clicked. At the time I was in very good shape and above average attractive, but I had been out of the game for so long that I was having a hard time closing the deal with the dates. So I decided to amp up my age range from 22 to 32, I was 25, to 22 to 50, just completely hitting the screw it button and saying I'll take what I can take. I was warned this would end badly and didn't listen. So I matched with this 41-year-old, very pretty, incredible body, down-to-earth woman. Right out of the gate, she messages me, "I'm getting out of a relationship too. I'm just looking for someone to keep my needs satisfied." My profile explained my situation rather bluntly. So I agree at work, at 1:45 p.m. to go over her house right after work with condoms, lube, weed, and Red Bull per her request. I get there, beautiful 2-bedroom ranch, upscale part of town, BMW and driveway. I call her, and she meets me in the garage. As soon as I walk in, she says, "Let's get the first time out of the way tonight, then we can chat before we go at it again." We were both off the next day, so the plan was to lock ourselves inside knocking boots for a long time. We end up having our first go at it, for over 2 hours, where she wasn't into anything freaky, but it was incredible for both of us. It's now 8:30 p.m., worked until 6, and we go to sit down and talk. This lasted about 30 minutes until we started to go at it again for another hour and a half. She asks if she can record us, and I said I wasn't okay with that. She said you hold the camera, and I agreed. She starts amping up her game, some serious porn star stuff. It was great. Everything was going in a great direction, and it was still before midnight. Until I went to the bathroom. I use the restroom and clean up in there for a hot minute, and come out. We get to talking about our previous relationship and how awful they were, and she gets up to go to the bathroom. This is where it gets crazy. Sorry for the rant, I have been holding this in for 5 years, and just saw this and had to jump on it. She comes out of the bathroom worked up and starts screaming, "Where did you put it? What did you do with it?" The bathroom was connected to the living room we were in, so as I walked out of the bathroom, I could see her on the couch. I couldn't have gone anywhere. I asked, whoa, what are you talking about? She screams, my plant, my big plant. What did you do with it? Confused, I looked back at her and said, what? What happened to it? Is it broken or something? She screams. It's gone, where did you put it? I have no idea what she was on about. I try to act calm and say, I didn't take it or even touch it. I couldn't even describe it if I tried. How could I take it if I come directly out of the bathroom into this room? She starts throwing candles, vases, remotes, anything she can find at me as hard as she could while screaming like a lunatic. Nothing I could even understand. So I say, yeah, I'm gonna go, I am not sure what is going on, but I need to leave, and proceed to walk out. She follows me outside screaming bloody murder. You come over here, and F me on camera, and you try to steal from me. Again, that was her idea. I didn't want to do that. It's midnight, so her screams are echoing, and she was so loud. I try to get in my car, and she won't let me. She gets in front of my door, and starts swinging at me to make me step back. She's screaming, don't you f-ing dare try to leave, you violate me, my home, and disrespect me and think you can leave. You're not going anywhere until I get my plant back, again screaming at the top of her lungs. I'm trying to calm her down, and get her to have the conversation inside with the hopes of running to my car and getting out of there. She just keeps screaming and screaming. It's about 20 minutes later, and a cop car pulls up. 2 officers approach us, asking what the problem was, saying that they had received a lot of calls about what was going on. She looks at one of the officers and goes at hug him, saying, Danny, he stole Mom's plant and won't give it back. It's her brother. So now I am totally freaking out that I am going to get screwed by this women's relationship with the cop. Danny and the other officer calm her down and pull me aside. Danny looks at me and says, so what's your side of the story? I said, listen, officer, I am going to be completely honest here. I met her on Tinder earlier today, and she told me to come over tonight. I have all of the messages that show it was her idea. I don't know if I should go into detail because that's your sister, and I don't want to disrespect you in any way. He says it's fine, just explain, so I do, in full detail, including the video and everything. He sighs and says, hold on. He goes to talk to his sister, she's bawling by the way, and before he takes her inside, he asks me, do you have any belongings in the house? I say no, and he takes her inside. As soon as he comes out, she follows slowly behind, watching what happens. At this point, there are about 30 people crowding the surrounding driveway, watching everything unfold. Danny walks up to me and says, listen, my sister has gone through a lot since her divorce. Nothing on you, but she's on tough times. Do you want to press charges? I say no, I want to go home. He turns over his shoulder and says, to make this as simple and painless as possible with her, can I pretend to cuff you, put you in the back of my car, and have my partner follow us out in your car? Astounded, I stood there and said, excuse me? He re-explains and says for her to not make another scene where she could potentially damage my car, this would be easiest. I say fine, and do it. He pretends to put cuffs on me and walks me to the back of his car. His partner takes my keys and gets in my car. We drive for about 10 minutes as Danny explains and apologizes for what happened. We get to a Taco Bell and he pulls in. He lets me out of the car and asks if I wanted anything. I decline and wait for my car. As we're waiting, I ask him, is what we just did legal? He looks at me and says, it's helpful, here's my card. If you ever need anything within reason, please let me know. And he saves my name and number in his phone. I leave and go home. I never got to contact him, which I guess is a good thing. The worst part about all of this is about 2 months later I meet another girl, my age, and we start to seriously date. She tells me she wants me to meet her parents, so I agree. We leave her apartment in her car to drive out to her parents. I get this odd feeling that something is familiar. We pull into the driveway and go inside. Her parents are nice, sweet, and kind. We start to have dinner, and there's a knock on the door. Her father says, our next door neighbor wants to meet you. She practically helped raise Lori, my GF. A chill goes down my spine as the plant lady walks in. I have no words, frozen in fear and disbelief. I must have been pale because Lori asked me, are you okay? Before I can answer, the plant lady says, oh, I'm sure he's scared shitless right now. I can't believe you have the balls to be here. Silence. Fear. Sweat. All at once, still cannot find words. Her mother asks, do you two know each other? The plant lady says, oh, he's the one you called the police on, the guy who raped me, stole from me, and got arrested. Are you out on bail? I don't want you with my Lori. You probably defiled her as well. Turning to Lori, she says, you need to get tested because he gave me something. I am contemplating suicide by butter knife. I still can't find words. Her mother says, "Get the F*** out of my house. Remember, I didn't drive." Lori says she'll take me home, and her father says, "No, I will take him back. You are not to see this criminal ever again." I stand up and finally say, "That simply isn't true, but I am not here to argue or cause a scene. You're hearing one side to a story that Lori knows." I turn to Lori and say, "This is the date I was talking about, the one with the plant." Lori just puts her head down and says, "You should go." I say, "I'll walk to the end of the development and order an Uber." Her father says, "No, I will take you home." We get in the car, petrified, and start to drive to Lori's apartment in silence. As we get to her apartment, he says, "If I ever hear your name or see as much as a like on Lori's Facebook, I will come after you. She is my only child, and she is an innocent girl. I don't want her to be with a criminal rapist." I tell him that it is not true, and that his neighbor needs serious mental health. He goes, Yeah, which is why you left in the back of a cop car. You're not going to fool me. Don't make me repeat myself." I get out of the car and get in mind to go home. I call my friends to tell them what happened, and Lori calls me. I tell my buddy to go on mute, and I add her into the call. She tells me that she thought that she could really love me, and that I could have been someone she could have shared the rest of her life with. How could I be such a two-faced person? I try to explain myself, but it doesn't work, and the call ends with a complete and total break in communication. It was heartbreaking because she was an absolute incredible human being, and I could have married her. She was my one who got away. I swore off dating sites, and eventually met my current GF that I have been with for 3.5 years, who I plan on marrying when the time comes. It was single-handedly the worst experience of my entire life, and I have had 4 close family members die within a 2-week period. The legend of the plant lady still lives on, and has been told to all of my friends and current GF. I should have listened when my one buddy warned me that women over 40 with men under 30 is a bad idea. They're sex-craved lunatics if you meet them online. I never wanted to test the rule by having another encounter like that, so never again, never again. Thanks for taking the time to ready this short story. It was devastating, so I had a lot to get out. To sum up, male, 25, hooks up with female, 41, with passionate crazy sex. After multiple sessions and a bathroom break, she accuses me of stealing a plant, which leads to the cops getting called in the middle of the night. One of the cops being her brother, being fake handcuffed and departing in the back of a cop car to help the cop who was the brother out. 2 months pass, dating a girl, met her parents. Plant lady lives next door, helped raise GF at the time, got accused of rape and theft. Driven to my car and threatened by the father. Talked to the GF, she broke it off completely. Could have been the one. Never Tinder hookup with older women if you are under 30. It's scary. This fucking nightmare ended about 2 hours ago. TLDR, shrink your Tinder radius. Don't do drugs. Don't do drugs with people you don't know. Don't do LSD with hookups. Listen to your very sober friend, and don't think with your dick. So 2 days ago, a friend of mine asks me for a ride to the gas station. Says he has a question he wants to ask me in person. Okay, I'm curious. He says there's this girl he's been talking to, and he wants to meet up, drop acid, hook up, but neither can drive, so he asks if I can drive to pick her up if he comps gas. Sure, okay, I'm not doing anything. He wants to go in the morning, okay. So it's 7:40 a.m. I've just picked him up. Stop at a gas station for some gas, snacks, cigarettes, and air. Gonna be great. Punch the details into GPS. It's a 40-minute drive. Okay, whatever. He's already tossed me some gas money. We drive down. It's a great drive. Sunny, breezy country highways. We lose reception about 10 minutes from her address. No huge deal. We've got playlists. Pick her up. She sits in the front while he's in the back behind me. Great drive back, windows down, cruise control, smoking cigarettes and bumping tunes. I got a few weird vibes from her, just spilling some heavy-ass TMI. But I'd already told him I thought it was a bad idea. I dropped them off at his place at approximately 9:20. Drive back to my place, sit in the car, my boyfriend's car, with permission, my car is too rickety. Smoke a cigarette or two, listen to some music, suddenly have to pee real bad. Run into our apartment, got a text from my friend that just reads, "You," at 11:10 a.m. I'm not too worried, I'll respond in a few. The second I finish peeing, haven't even touched the TP, I get a call from him. He says, "Hey, there's some scrabbling," and she's on the phone crying, "Please come pick me up, I'm so scared, please hurry. I just want to go home, please don't hang up." I'm thinking, what the fuck happened? Finish my bathroom stuff and drive over. She gets in the car sobbing, nose running, crying into her phone to someone else. I offer her some of my tea lemonade. She says it's really good. I stop at the gas station again, am handed gas money again, and get her own. It's in a clear bottle. She opens it, factory sealed. Doesn't shake it first, takes a sip, says it tastes different. Sees the tea and pulp. Accuses me of trying to drug her for about 15 minutes straight, begging me to tell her what I put in the drink. I explain she just needs to shake it up. After a while she came down and asked to stop and get food. We stopped for burgers, fries, ice cream. She tells me what happened. She has severe PTSD, took a dab, and it intensified the paranoia and spooked her the fuck out. She was still high at this point, but out of her panic attack. We chatter, she's sweet but still spilling some ridiculously personal shit. Adds me on Facebook, I drive her the rest of the way back. We part ways and I call my friend to fill him in that it was a panic attack ex-dab. After I'm home for a bit I messaged to ask her how she's doing. She's appreciative I reached out and took care of her during the attack, apologizing profusely for everything. I put the phone down, take a nap with my boyfriend. Woke up, went to the bathroom, and he had texted me that she was in a better headspace and that they wanted to try again. I told him that I didn't want to drive there and back for more times in the same day. Could it wait until tomorrow? They agree. Then one of the two texts and asks me if I'd go down to pick her up if she stayed the night. I groan and moan but ultimately agree, making both of them agree that they'd lay low this time. So I pick him up, he literally lives 3 blocks away. Again and we set out again. It's approximately 7:15 p.m. this time. We bump my music, smoke cigs, talk and enjoy the company and sunsets. Pick her up, she's in a much better mood, head back. Drop them off and I head home. Get home about 9:30ish, give or take. I lay down on our ridiculously comfortable couch and pass out at about 11. It's 2:30 a.m. and I woke up, thanks Kat. Check my phone, text from her saying, "Help me, they're up to something, I'm freezing, I puked twice, help." And from him saying, "Please tell me you're awake." I respond once or twice, then he calls. I answer and he explains that they're trying to figure out what the fuck to do. She needs to be moved off the property, or he needs me to calm her down, or just give him some moral support, because she's having another panic attack, on acid this time. Fucking Christ, why does no one listen to me? I throw some clothes on and head over. I pull up and she walks up to me, chatting a mile a minute, tears and snot and puke all over. He's trying not to cry and clearly trying to kill the high. His buddy is wandering around so high he can't string more than 3 words together, and his buddy's mom is flitting around like a hummingbird trying to quietly get things back in order. My friend is living with the mom and dad. We corral her into the car. She's crying about how cold it is and how she just wants to go home. I reiterate that I just woke up to friend, buddy, and buddy's mom and am not sure that I'm safe to drive that distance at night while tired. We're discussing options standing outside of my boyfriend's car while she moans into her arms. It's honestly mostly me, friend, and the mom talking since buddy was off on Mars. My personal vote is to get a cheap but safe hotel room in town for the night and let her come down there, drive her back in the morning. Her vote is to go home. Buddy's is to call an Uber, which would have been $85. Friend gets cold, so he goes into the car. I ask Buddy to go get a water bottle for her, so she has something to drink. He complies, Mom and I talk options. It's been about 20 minutes. The biggest thing is getting her somewhere else so the dad of the house doesn't wake up. He's anti-drug, would have called the police, and thrown friend's ass onto the curb while he was in lockup. Straight edge, works in prisons, the whole 9. I wish I was joking. So I decide that as long as I have a partner to talk to on the road, then I'll be fine to drive. I'm pretty damn awake at this point. Stop and get a 5-hour energy and we're off. Car ride is fucking silent the whole way. I'm obviously focused on the road, looking for deer, almost hit one at one point. Drumming my fingers to music, smoking, trying to wrap my head around this ridiculous reality. Drop her off and leave right away. My friend and I talked the entire way back about what happened, life, sobriety, religion. It got fucking deep. As we're coming off the highway into town, friend gets a text from Buddy that dad just woke up. I ask him if he wants to lay low at our place for a bit, since he's still tripping. He agrees, we drive to my place. Turns out dad doesn't work today. Friend crashed on the comfortable couch, got some sleep. I just dropped him back off, sobered up, about 2 hours ago. In total, I spent almost exactly 6 hours behind the wheel and was comped gas and emotional labor. It was an experience. This happened about 2 years ago. Matched with this girl who lived in my area. She knew a few people I knew, but we never crossed paths. I didn't know much about her besides the fact that we both had mutual friends, or I should say acquaintances to say the least considering what I'm about to share. We spent about a week talking before we had plans to meet up. Through text she gave me no viable signs that she was heavy into drugs or any other kind of red flags. Just to throw that at there, I'm not one to judge. I'm not perfect, and I've had my share of experiences growing up. I've done drugs, partied, got into reckless situations, and what have you as a young male teenager going into my early 20s. I'm 27 now, so as I grew older that side of me definitely calmed down a whole lot. I made plans to meet her at a local Dunkin' Donuts on a Friday night. It was about halfway between where she lived and I lived, so I figured it was fair and neither of us had to do much traveling. Plus the area where the Dunkin' is was super busy and has a bunch of different shops, bars, restaurants, a movie theater, etc. It's the perfect place to bring someone for a first date because you have plenty of options. I sent her a text as I was walking up to the Dunkin' letting her know I was close. She texted back saying something along the lines of, "Okay, I'll be right out in a second." I had just lit a cigarette, so I figured I'd have time to smoke it while I waited for her outside. By the time I finished, she still wasn't outside, so I decided I'd just go in and meet her. As soon as I walk into the shop, she's slowly getting up out of her seat. She looked like a zombie and in the most monotone voice says, "Oh, hey," and proceeds to drop her purse on the floor. As I stated before, I'm not perfect, and I knew the signs of what she was on from experience. She was on so much Xanax she could barely function. Now I'm not a piece of shit, so my first instinct was to put some food in her stomach and then pay for her Uber home. I was in no position to continue the date, and clearly neither was she. Plus I did not want to be that guy who takes advantage of someone when they're that under the influence by taking them home. After I took her for some food, I talked with her for about an hour, then mentioned I'd feel more comfortable if we tried to continue this date at another time, and I'd gladly pay for her Uber home. It was like a switch flipped. She instantly got offended and upset, and started claiming how she canceled other plans to hang out with me, and how she came all this way, so she wants to enjoy her Friday night. I figured what the hell, and asked her if she wanted to come back to my place to smoke weed. She was on way too much drugs to drink, otherwise I would have offered to take her to a local bar instead like I originally intended. So I decided to pick the latter. We get back to my place, and I roll us up a joint. About halfway through smoking it, she looks at me with the most straight face and asks, "Do you mind if I call someone to bring me dog food?" For those of you who aren't aware, dog food is a street term for heroin. I may have done my share of narcotics and such, but I drew the line when it came to things like heroin, crack, and stuff I personally feel you can't come back from. I told her absolutely not. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that going on in my house. I let her know after we finished this joint I would call her a cab, and I was going to bed. When the joint finished, I called her an Uber, and then headed to my kitchen to grab us both a water bottle. I may have been done with this girl, but my mother raised me to be a hospitable person, lol. I have a nasty habit of putting away all my stuff when I step inside my house. That includes my keys, wallet, anything in my pockets really. As I grabbed the water, she took it upon herself to have a field day with the cash I had left in my wallet. Should have known better. I didn't realize it until the next morning after she had already left. I pray for any poor soul who had to deal with that train wreck after me. Mine's from Bumble, but it's the same basic principle. Frankly, I wish I had made this up, and I guess this is my way of getting it off my chest. I tried out Bumble on the recommendation of a friend of mine who had met his girlfriend of 3-ish years, and counting, on the app. Girls message first, which I appreciated since I'm awful at making moves. I thought to dip my toes in a little bit, try to get a couple conversations going before trying to proceed with anything. So my first match on the app is a girl about 40 miles from me. She leads with "Hi." I guess brevity is the essence of wit. So, I ask how her day's going, and this is where shit gets whack. "I'm gonna kill myself today. Wanna help?" Hopefully needless to say, I was spooked. There's some background to be known here. First, I have the social skills of a drunken garden slug. I have a difficult time telling when someone's bullshitting me or pulling the wool over my eyes, especially when the main method of contact is text. Second, I am a deeply empathetic individual, and if someone is in a dark place, it isn't in my nature to just up and leave, even when shit is obviously pretty fucked, even if it's fucked to a degree I can't even begin to help with. I try to give people a second head to bounce things off of, or just listen if that's what they need. And third, I had 3 part-time jobs as well as a 16-credit semester, and had been awake for around 30-some-odd hours at this point. Basically, I wasn't in the most lucid/reasonable state of mind. So I ask her what happened. She asks me to call her and gives me her number. I'm about to get into class, so I ask if I can call her later that evening. So that evening rolls around, and I give her a call. Long story short, she worked a dead-end job at a retirement home, still lived with her parents, and had no goals, aspirations, or what have you. Her parents largely ignored her, and she struggled with making genuine emotional connections with people. She had a lot of guys use her for sex, with one-night stands and the like being pretty common. I tried to listen more than to talk, since it was pretty clear that this was building up for a long time, and I may very well have been the only one to ask and or listen. We talked for about 45 minutes, with her venting and me just quietly listening. We text on and off for the next couple of days, then she goes quiet for about 6 days. I text her and just ask how she's doing. Who is this? Okay, ow. It's definitely a hard yeet. Sorry, is this? I could have the wrong number. No, this is. I refresh her memory, and she's in a difficult spot. She cut her wrist and arm up so bad she needed stitches. She sent me a photo, and I could tell she knew what she was doing. Down the road, not across the street. I ask that next time she wants to do that to herself, that she please give me a call or text me. She promises to, and I'm feeling good. Maybe I can help out someone in a dark place. But the next day is when it goes so far south that I end up in Antarctica. She had a one-night stand, and she didn't know it was one. She's tired of it all, and is going to end it. Disclaimer: I was coming off another all-nighter, so again, I wasn't in a tremendously lucid state of mind. I beg her not to. Tell her that none of the problems she has in life will be solved if she did. I thought about calling the police, and in retrospect, I absolutely wish I had. Hell, if I had the chance to do it all over again, I would call the police. I ping her a few times, to no reply. I ask that if she's still reading my texts, to please call the suicide hotline. I know it sounds stupid and trivial, but there is help out there. Please don't give up. And I'm woken up the following morning at about 4:30 to a manic wall of text insisting that they don't help. I found this a curious assertion, considering that she's probably never called them, and if I had to guess, probably hadn't. Supposedly, she ended up in the emergency room, followed by a psych ward. I kind of furrow my brow at this, since she wouldn't have her phone in a psych ward. She claims to have gone after a couple nurses/orderlies, and that the only good part is that she got hurt worse than they did. But here's the catch. She was bullshitting me. I started to suspect this by the time she revealed it, considering the whole phone in a psych ward shtick. Aside, as someone who's been in a psych ward and genuinely dealt with this kind of shite, it was difficult for me not to go, how fucking dare you. She then launches into a panic attack, if it's even possible to tell such a thing over text. I ask her to try a technique that I had to use with relative frequency to push back or help mitigate a panic attack on the fly, and she calls me retarded. Another aside, it was difficult for me not to just go, alright honey, fuck off. I guess the only reason I kept a level head was that she was already pissed off enough at the world and herself, so another angry voice wouldn't have helped any. However, I go quiet, ultimately deciding that she needs to just cool off for a while. Wrong again. She texts me a bit later, pissed off that I'm not replying. I tell her that I can't say anything to that, and that this isn't something that just goes away if you leave it alone. I tell her she needs help. Whatever. I'm blocking you. Soon as it had sunk in, I sat down at my desk and started going over work and homework. I didn't really come to terms with the whole ordeal until winter break of that semester, since I didn't have a ton of time to think about anything besides classes and work. When I was in high school, I was bad with girls. I don't just mean a stammering mess, I mean full-on gynophobe. It had started getting better once I got to uni, and even better after my shitty vacation at a psych ward. But she dredged it all back up, and I'm only recently starting to pick up the pieces. I've got my own problems to sort out, and this was kind of a harsh lesson, albeit not unjust, that some people are in need of greater help than a verbal punching bag. I guess my biggest regret on the whole ordeal, aside from the fact that it even happened in the first place, was that I didn't call the police. Even if it just made matters worse for her, at least she might have thought twice before threatening to off herself at anyone who gave her the time of day. I'm not even angry or bitter at her, even despite what she said to me. I'm just sad for her sake. I hope she ended up getting the help she needed, and whether or not I was an integral part of that is irrelevant. This turned into a wall, so sorry about that. Thanks for listening. I've been waiting to tell this one. Let me try to explain this one. Never tried to tell this story before, so I apologize in advance if it's all over the place. You know how it goes with Tinder. Make a few matches, start a few conversations, get some phone numbers. That funnels down to maybe 1 or 2 matches that you alter daily. Well, this was one of those connections I texted daily. Finally asked her out to lunch. Lunch date went great. Scheduled a jog together at a local park. That went great. Now fast forward to next week, and a dinner date was planned for Friday night. She texted me a few hours before we planned to meet with some bad news. She stated that she couldn't meet later on that night due to her father needing to use her car for work that evening. I was bummed but totally okay with that. It's more important for her father to keep his job than for us to meet up. Family first. She explained to me her family's economic situation, and I couldn't get upset at something like this. Shit happens. We strike up our normal text conversations after the date was canceled, and that's when I'm guessing she was comfortable enough to ask if I would be able to pick her up from her house. Mind you, this point we're still strangers, haven't even exchanged social media yet. FB, Snap, Instagram. I agreed to pick her up, and now the date is back on. I arrived at her place and picked her up. We both decided to go to a wing place. There we are, both 3 beers in. Both just destroyed a spinach dip appetizer like a bunch of hungry lions on the Serengeti. Just before we ordered our main course of gourmet wings LOL, I noticed her phone ringing a lot. Like a crazy ex finding out you're on a date and trying to get a hold of you ringing. She tries to silence her phone, but someone was really trying to get a hold of her. I'm talking call after call after call. I suggested she answer. Might be an emergency, but she declined. Stated it was her mom, trying to get a hold of her. I told her, she should probably answer. What if it's an emergency? So she gets up and walks outside the extremely loud wing place. So, yeah, not the first time I got into someone's shitty relationship drama, because I was the rebound after a bad breakup. So at this point I'm thinking the worst, her husband, boyfriend, or something was really blowing her phone up. I'm waiting for some dude to approach me and start a fight. Extremely common where I live, so she was gone like 5 to 10 minutes at this point, and I was seriously thinking about just getting the check because there's a chance she's not coming back to the table. She comes back to the table looking like a ghost, and all freaked out. I asked her if everything was okay, and her next words were, "My brother was just found dead in his apartment. Can you please give me a ride over there?" I agreed, paid the tab, and drove like Batman over to where her brother's apartment was. We arrive at the apartment, and there were police cars everywhere. She tried to jump out of my truck, 4-inch lift, and crashed the landing. I park, run around to help her out, and as I'm brushing the dirt off her jeans, here comes the whole family. I'm talking every local branch of the family tree was there. Maybe 15 to 20 people. So there I was meeting mom, dad, and everyone else at their complete worst. As I was walking back to the driver's side of my truck, I hear someone call my work nickname. I work with some of the local law enforcement, and one of the officers on scene was a good friend of mine. He calls me over, and as I got over to his cruiser, he's asking why the hell I am here. I briefly explained to him that I was on a date with the sister of the departed. I asked what happens and being close friends through work, both in LE. He tells me the guy committed suicide, explains how he was found and points to a hand-drawn stack of papers and says that's the suicide note right there. My reaction was complete shock, and I just wanted to get the fuck out of there. I'm not a family member. I don't know this girl at all, and I'm not helping anyone by being there. I ask my officer friend if he can move his cruiser a little bit so I can get past and leave. He's clearing a path, and I'm walking back to my truck. The father of the girl I was just on a date with grabs me and demanded I tell him what happened. It just hit me like a dump truck. They haven't been told how their relative died, but the father demands I tell him. So I'm trying to deflect. I'm trying to get to my truck and just fucking leave. But this guy had both hands around my left wrist, with the whole family mob standing right behind him, begging me to explain what happened. So I tell them he committed suicide. The father falls to the ground, mom faints, does the same. Everyone is crying and going crazy. Now is my time to fucking leave. But the girl I was on a date with runs up to me and hugs me, crying her brains out, screaming in my neck/shoulder. So I stayed and helped as I could. The family all packed into cars to get there, so there wasn't enough room for my date to fit somewhere. She asked if I could drive her and her parents back to their house, and of course I agreed to. Most awkward night of my life. So I meet girl on Tinder, we have similar tastes in music and she seemed interesting to talk to, so we make plans to hang on Monday. She comes over for a couple hours and we just chat, feeling each other out, and all seems good so far. We make plans for her to come back over on Wednesday. Now these plans don't work out, as she said she got behind on homework and needs to be responsible. But remember this, as this later becomes an important part of the story. Friday comes around and she says she can hang, asks if she can spend the night. I agree. She brings over some White Claws to drink, though I'm not much of a drinker. I believe I have 2 or 3, she has maybe 6. We're laying in bed, have sex, everything's good. Then, something happens. I don't know what was said, and neither does she, but something that happened triggered her, and she's clearly irritated to some degree. I ask her what, she says nothing, she's fine. Okay, a little weird, but I give her space. Just lay on my phone and let her figure it out. Tell her she can talk about it if she figures it out. A couple minutes later, she rolls on top of me and starts crying hard, just loudly bawling her eyes out. I am so caught off guard, but am in the mental health field and pretty comfortable with these kinds of things. I just run her back and whisper, "It's okay, you're okay." She eventually stops and makes a number of comments like, "You think I'm crazy, huh?" And something like, "You probably aren't ready to be with someone like me with all these issues." And I'm kind of thinking like, maybe this seems like a red flag, but I'm trying to be understanding, saying it's okay to cry, etc. Still don't know why she started crying, and apparently neither does she either. The next day she basically just says, "I was feeling really sad thoughts all of a sudden." Well, okay. Fast forward to the next Friday. We made plans to hang out again, or spend the night, same deal. Starts out great. We're having fun playing outside together and doing whatever. She brought White Claws over again, and at this point she's probably had like 4, I've had none. We go back into my room, have sex, and then crying again. This time, I'm getting more context on why she's crying. She's crying because her best friend is an addict who's tempting her to start using. Again, that's because she's a recovering addict who's been in rehab services. A recovering addict who just relapsed last Wednesday. You remember, last Wednesday when we were going to hang out, but she had homework? Yeah, apparently what actually happened was her friend convinced her to go use again. Now again, I'm in the mental health field. I'm not judging her for struggling with the issues. However, it's clear she's presently struggling with addiction, and that's not really a good place to build a relationship off of. So at this point, I'm convinced I'm over it. But she's probably already buzzed, and I'll let her stay the night, then let her know tomorrow it isn't going to work out. Well, she didn't let me exactly get that far with it. Fast forward to night time, and she's drank a lot more. Probably on her 10th White Claw, assuming the 12-pack she brought was full when she came. And I can tell she's drunk now, as did my roommate. So it's getting late, I'm tired, we head to bed. She starts trying to make sexual advances on me, and not really feeling it. Not only have I lost interest at this point, but she's drunk. She couldn't even remember entirely what happened the last time she drank around me. And this time she drank much more, so definitely a no-go. I tell her, I just want to cuddle. She starts laughing, aggressively says, "Fuck your cuddles," and pushes me off her, getting out of bed and drinking more of the White Claw she has on the dresser. This is really hurtful to me, I feel used. I feel objectified. Like all that's important to me about her at this moment is having sex with me. When she turns around, she sees I'm clearly upset. She asks what's wrong, and I tell her I don't like getting that hostile of a response for not being in the mood to have sex. That makes me feel used. I start crying a little, which makes her cry again, really hard. She says she never wants to make me feel used. She cares so much about me, admits that she feels like she loves me. Now I'm getting uncomfortable, kinda just nodding my head. Starts complaining about her situation again, saying how hard she's struggling and stuff, overall making the situation about her. So I'm 100% done at this point, but playing nice to not escalate the situation. Well, I didn't have to, because she did for me. Just minutes after going through all that, she starts trying to make advances on me again. I again tell her, I just want to cuddle. Again, she is clearly irritated, though doesn't say anything when asked. I kinda sat there in my bed for a couple minutes, contemplating what to do as her back is to me, and I decide to play on my phone more. As I move to grab it, which is on my left side while she's on my right, she turns around sharply and says, "Don't touch me." I say that I wasn't going to, and she says, "Good, you just stay on that side of the bed and I'll stay on this side." Okay, well, I'm going to go lay on the couch, I decide. This is getting way too hostile for me. So I lay down on the couch and hear rustling in my room. Scared she's actually doing something to my stuff, I open the door to find her packing her stuff. She says she's leaving. I ask her if she's sober enough to drive. She says, "Oh yeah, definitely." walks out my door, borderline slams it, and drives away. She called me when she got home. I didn't answer. My anxiety was through the roof dealing with that last 30 minutes or so. Come like 9 a.m., she calls me. I don't answer the first time, contemplate it, and call back. She says something along the lines of, "Hey, sorry about last night. I don't remember everything that happened, but I know I messed up. I left some stuff there, can I come get it?" I say sure, see you later, hang up. Try and go back to sleep. She calls again. "Hey, I just wanted to clarify so I feel better, is this over?" I say yeah, it is. She says okay, and hang up. I return to trying to sleep. Calls me a third time. "Hey, sorry, I just really want to fix this. I like you a lot, and I'm not ready to give up on you." I say we'll talk when she gets here. She comes over, grabs her stuff, we talk. Nothing substantial is said, basically just, "Yeah, I'm not interested in being in a relationship with you. It seems like you're going through a lot right now." She's sad but truthfully takes it really well. We aren't really talking anymore, but she did say she got me a birthday present for my birthday next month, and would like to give it to me eventually. So this was my horror story experience. Ultimately, I don't think she's a bad person. She's going through a really tough time right now, and I think I made a safe space for her to open up, though she really probably needs a therapist or more trusted long-term friend to open up to, not the dude she met on Tinder for 2 weeks. She thanked me for being so understanding and apologized for meeting her during such a low point for her, and I do forgive her. I don't have any residing negative feelings, but man was that a crazy ride. I met this guy on Tinder, and we spoke for ages, through Tinder, messaging, and then finally FaceTime, before we actually met. I was so sure of him, as we got along so well. We lived on opposite sides of London, and he asked me to travel his way. I suggested maybe we could meet in the middle somewhere, but he said he had a pub in mind that he really thought I'd love, so I agreed. He also insisted on picking me up from the train station, which really goes against everything I believe in, but for some reason I let him. I guess I felt I could trust him after months of video calling. So he picks me up, and for a while we drive around aimlessly while he looks for bars. I said I thought the whole point of me coming here was that you had somewhere local you really like. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was evasive and kind of put me on edge. We then find this dingy little pub where we can barely hear each other as it's so crowded with Friday night drinkers. He was really nice though and reminded me of the times we'd talked before, so I relaxed. When he suggested we get a few drinks at the shop and go back to his, I agreed. Stupidly, but I felt that the noisy pub was hindering our evening, and I felt a little silly being too scared to go back to his. We get back to his, and he rents a room in a flat with other people on the top floor. We start watching a movie, and instantly he tries to make out with me. Hands start wandering, etc. I was so uncomfortable with this, and made it quite clear I wasn't ready to go that far, but it seemed to make him start acting more desperate. He was literally rolling up his sleeves to show me his biceps, and asking if I liked them. Halfway through the movie, he says he needs to go out. I'm like, what the actual fuck? After quizzing him about it, he says he has to go and meet some friends quickly. I was kind of pissed at this and said who goes to meet their mates halfway though a date? His response was, well, you're not putting out. I could have been out at the club getting loads of chicks, but I canceled and turns out for nothing. Obviously at this point I'm like, yeah, I'm done. So I get up and say I'm going to go home. The guy runs to the door and locks it. I start really freaking out, and this guy's an inch from my face with his hand against the door, pinning me to it. I can hear people downstairs, so I tell him I'll start screaming, and that seemed to worry him, so he unlocked the door. I sprinted down the stairs and opened the front door. It was hammering down with rain, so opened my umbrella, but I was just so happy to be outside. Suddenly, I feel a pull and turn around to see him hanging onto my umbrella, leaning out of his doorway. I yelled to let go, but he wouldn't, so I had to just drop it and run off in the rain. I really had no idea where I was and was quite away from the nearest station. Plus it was midnight, so I was close to missing the last train. Suddenly I'm walking, and as I turn a corner, a car pulls up super close to me, and the door is opened right in front of me. I stopped for a split second, but it was enough for this guy to lean out and pull my bag, and then in my struggle, pull me by my hand into his car. I'm literally freaking out, thinking, how is this happening to me? I'm going to become one of those girls that gets murdered by an internet creep. He starts apologizing and saying we had such a great time and a great connection, and that he doesn't want to end on a bad note. I'm kind of thinking this guy's nuts and that I should play it safe. So I'm like, yeah, we did have a great time. I just got a little upset and shook up when you locked the door on me, but I was just in a bad mood. I'd love to see you again, blah blah. The guy starts going on and on about his past relationships and stuff, and I'm sitting there too scared to say anything in case it's the wrong thing. I say to him at one point I'm about to miss my last train, so he offers to drive me home. I really didn't want this, but said okay, just to keep him calm. He asked whereabouts I live, and when I told him, he was like, actually that's kind of far. I'll just drop you here. I realize at this point he's been driving back to his place, so I get out and have to walk back to the station again and find the station's closed as it's past hours. I checked my phone route and had to get 2 night buses, which took 4 hours to get back. As I'm getting on this bus, I get a text from him that read, generic insult about you being a fatty. I was not even close to being fat, and the guy couldn't be bothered to even think of an insult for me. Matched with a gorgeous woman, and we got to chatting straight away. We had great convo and no trouble genuinely making each other laugh. She was very responsive and seemed super interested, so was I. So unsurprisingly, plans for a date quickly ensued. So far so good. This was just after the last round of lockdowns had ended where I live. You needed to book just about everywhere, and places were being strict about charging for canceled bookings and allotting 2-hour table time limits. Took the risk and booked for drinks. I show up on time. Waiter takes me to the table. I order a drink and chill, thinking she's going to be a little late based on the last TXT exchange. 15 minutes and I get a text saying she's struggling to find parking. Not a problem, no stress, see you when you get here, I respond. 15 minutes later, the follow-up. I'm just around the corner, TXT lands. At this stage I've finished the drink I ordered, and the waiter keeps coming round, reminding me I've got limited time on the booking, and asking if I want another drink or to order food. I turn down the drink, not wanting to be half cut, when slash if my date shows, and don't order food either. Waiter looks very annoyed. I'm thinking about settling the bill and getting on my merry way. 15 minutes later, a total of 45 minutes late, date finally shows. I'm annoyed, but she walks in looking smoking hot, looking even better than her very attractive pics, and apologizes profusely, which lowers the irritation to a simmer that is quickly forgotten. Grinning face with sweat. She did make a remark about how she had to take time to get pretty for me. That kinda irked me, but again, smoking hot, and besides that quip actually quite charming, so I let it slide. My date orders a cocktail, I get a beer, and she downs the thing before I've gotten a quarter of the way through my beer, and immediately orders another one, and slams that one down before I can finish my beer. Remember, she drove to this date. Waiter does his time, keep thing looking even more annoyed, and we collectively realize not enough time to eat, so I settle the bill, and my date, and I decide to go elsewhere. At this point, I'm pretty much sober, but I can see slam him down cocktail Sue is in no state to drive. Turns out she parked her car about a block away, which begs the question why it took her so long to get there if she was parked around the CNR. But Waitev's issue now is she can't drive, and will 100% get a ticket if she leaves her car where it is. I'm a little amused at her plight, but I offer a solution. Find a long-term park for the car, then it won't an issue for the evening. She agrees this is sensible, but she's definitely over the limit, so I drive her car into an overnight-type parking lot with a reasonable weekend rate and think crisis averted. Little did I know what would follow. We kick onto a few other spots round town, and by this point the city is heaving, and we're progressively both getting drunker and drunker, but having an absolute blast. End up at club-type spot dancing, getting handsy and lip-locking with each other. Never had a first date quite so raucous, but this woman is hilarious and good times are being had by all. Then things suddenly turn. She takes a phone call, her face visibly darkens, and she's absolutely seething. Apparently it's someone she did a favor for that turned on her, and she says, "I can be the sweetest, kindest person in the world, but if you cross me I'll destroy you," flushed face. We're both quite drunk, but I can see this line of talk ain't leading to anything good, so I try to change the subject to no avail. She's ranting and getting more and more worked up. People start to stare, and I hold her hand and gently try to calm her down. She flips the script and yells, "Don't fucking touch me." Mind you, we'd been a hell of a lot more intimate already by then than hand-holding, so I'm completely thrown. Time freezes as literally everyone turns to look at what must look like an abusive spouse, me. Thankfully, she spots the look of shock/horror on my face, quickly grabs my hand, apologizes, and tries to snuggle into me. I'm deafened by the alarm bells ringing in my head, and all I can think about is how to pull the pin on this date ASAP. I say I'm leaving, get up, walk out. She chases after me. She's now beside herself, emotional, and I say we're clearly both way too drunk, and we should end the date. I offer to pay for her Uber home, and she mutters something about getting a hotel room for the night, as she needs her car first thing in the morn. I tell her that that's a good idea, but that I won't be joining her in the hotel room. I'm going home, thanks very much. She then flies into a rage and demands I help her get her car from parking garage because she's too drunk to do it. I'm like, lady, I'm just as drunk as you. No goddamn way I'm getting behind the wheel of anything right now. Besides, you don't need your car if you Uber home or get a hotel room. She calls me every name in the book, and I walk away, call an Uber, go home, laughing to myself about my date with Satan's little helper. I receive a barrage of abusive TXTs and attempts at emotional blackmail. How can you just leave me like this, which I ignore. Get home, turn my phone off, and crash. Next morning I wake up to a video message from her. She went and got her car and drove it home, y'all. The recording was her gunning it down the highway while filming and taunting me. Sweet baby Jesus, what is wrong with you? Was all I could reply. About 6 hours later, she's blowing up my phone apologizing, saying how she's embarrassed and ashamed, got too drunk, and isn't normally like this. I tell her she's playing with fire with what she did, and that she could have in a moment destroyed her life, or worse, someone else's, with her craziness. She agrees. I stop talking to her. Really hope she got help, but yeah, this is the craziest date I've ever been on. Suzanne and I lived in the countryside, just the two of us. Our house was big, with 2 floors, and surrounded by tall trees, so no one could see us. It felt private, like our own little world. I really liked our house. It was away from the city. There was no sound of cars moving all the time, and the air was very clean and fresh. Whenever I would take a deep breath, I always felt my body relaxing. We were living the perfect life. I got really lucky for finding a rich girl like her. But I didn't know the consequences that I had to face for living with her. We met on Tinder when I was 25 and she was 24. Suzanne was already rich, both from her family and her high-paying job at Vernon Enterprises. She was smart, fit, and always dressed like a boss even at home. I was more of a skinny, nerdy guy with big green eyes and a goofy smile. Not the best looking, but I was working out and trying to improve myself for her. Our relationship was good, but sometimes she came home from work in a bad mood. She liked being in charge, even at home. Every night, she would start yelling at me about chores. Steven, cut the grass. Put this away. Clean the bathroom. You do nothing all day. Her voice was usually nice, but when she was mad, it sounded like a drill sergeant. I tried not to argue because it wasn't worth the fight. I loved her too much. I was literally retired and used to chill at home all the time. I was living the life of luxury others just dream of having. But there was something else about Suzanne. She was a serial killer. Every week, she brought home a new roommate, sometimes a guy, sometimes a girl. They were always good looking. She kept them alive for days, treating them like toys. Then, when she got bored, she killed them, either cutting them up or chopping off their heads. Blood and guts would go everywhere like a horror movie. Most of her victims were travelers or college students, people who wouldn't be missed. And it was my job to clean up after her. I had to bury the bodies in the basement. Suzanne checked my work like a strict teacher. If I messed up, she would know. To be honest, I wasn't frightened of her. I did feel a little uncomfortable every time I buried a body, but even that feeling went away. It started to feel like a chore that I had to do. Even though she was dangerous, I stayed. I loved her too much to leave. She paid for everything, gave me time to write, and kept me safe. I didn't want her to get caught. We were a team. If she put up with me being unemployed, I could handle her habits. Obviously, a healthy relationship requires efforts and compromises from both sides, so I just brushed it off as a compromise. She had a lot of good things which made me fall in love with her. And honestly, life with her wasn't all bad. We watched horror movies, had fun together, and even got married. But Suzanne could be moody, and sometimes she didn't want to be intimate as much as I did. I wanted her all the time, but she made me wait on purpose. When she left for work in the mornings, I was alone in the house. Just me and my beautiful, terrifying wife. Susan told me that if I ever left, she'd hunt me down and kill me, and not just me, but my whole family too. Mom, Dad, my sisters. She'd keep me alive just to watch. She'd kiss me right before cutting me open like some crazy doctor, while I was still awake. And the scariest part, she'd say it all with a sweet little smile. I knew she wasn't joking. This is the time when I get scared of her and see her as a stranger. But these are just her mood swings that get better later. Sometimes I get chills down my spine thinking that what if someday she gets mad at me for something, and I end up dead, just like she says so. Suzanne never made threats, only promises. She was serious about everything, both at her job and with her other hobby. But I also knew she only said these things because she cared. She wanted me to stay. Forever. And I did. It was like a blood pact. I agreed to stay in the house. I'd take care of things, like an old husband looking after his sick wife. I was the house husband after all. And like Susan always said, who would believe me anyway? If I ever went to the cops, why would they trust some broke horror writer over a rich, successful businesswoman? Especially when I was the one who buried all the bodies. She could just throw away money and make my life hell. Even when Suzanne hit me or yelled at me, I knew no one would take my side. People would just tell me to man up. In some ways I was just another one of her victims. But the messed up part? I liked it. I felt safe in this nightmare. I was always kind of a loner, but now I had someone. A wife who was just as weird as me. Even if she did enjoy killing people. The good times made it worth it. I could put up with the crazy, the violence, and even the blood for those perfect nights when everything felt right. It was like waiting in a long, boring line for an amazing roller coaster. The ride made the wait worth it. The hard part was all the nights she wasn't in the mood. Most of the time, she kept her distance, barely even cuddled me. Some nights, she wouldn't even let me sleep in the same bed. She'd make me crash on an air mattress near the door, surrounded by all her elephant statues. Meanwhile, she got to sleep like a queen in her giant bed. I knew she had to be up early for work. And yeah, my late-night writing annoyed her. But still going to bed at 10 p.m.? That was torture. Most nights I had to beg just to get a kiss. Forget anything more than that. Suzanne was a night owl too, but only on the weekends. I, on the other hand, stayed up late every night. My best writing happened in the early hours of the morning, right around the time Suzanne was waking up for work. Unlike me, she had her mornings down to a science. She could roll out of bed, brush her teeth, get dressed, and be out the door in minutes. But she expected me to move just as fast. So instead of waking up groggy and slow, I just stayed up all night. That way, when she got up, I was already awake and ready. I let her have the big bed while I worked under the dim lamp, writing away on my little air mattress. My own tiny office. Suzanne's morning routine was serious business. And just like with all my other chores, I was terrified of messing it up. Too many mistakes meant punishment. And I'd seen firsthand how she handled discipline with a long, sharp blade. Friday morning was no different. I sat on my blow-up mattress, typing away while my queen slept. My fingers ached, but I kept going. Then, like a fire alarm, her phone blasted through the room. Suzanne groaned like a beast waking up. Her cold eyes locked onto me. "Well," she snapped. I was mid-sentence staring at my screen. "Just let me finish this real chew." Thud. A pillow smacked the back of my head. "Aw fuck." I yelped. The pillow landed beside me like a rock. Damn, she had an arm. "Hurry up, Steven," she barked. I slammed my laptop shut and stumbled to my feet. The air mattress wobbled under me like quicksand. "Hold on. I told you to stop walking on the damn mattress." Suzanne groaned. Finally, I stepped onto the floor. "I'm sorry." Before I could react, her hands shoved me toward the bedroom door. Her strength was unreal, like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers. Then again, she had to be strong. "Shit," I muttered. "Go," she yelled. I caught myself against the wall, nodded, and hurried downstairs like a soldier obeying orders. In the kitchen, I went straight to the Keurig. The fridge was covered in photos of us, Suzanne and I, smiling together. But every picture was taken inside the house or in the yard. We didn't go out much. Neither did her victims. Their faces stared back at me from the fridge, duct-taped mouths and terrified eyes. The ones Suzanne liked the most had been photographed, printed, and proudly displayed like trophies that I guess I should feel lucky our pictures were up there too. As I made Suzanne's coffee, I heard her getting ready. Her phone blasted "No Tears Left to Cry" so loud that I could hear it everywhere. Her footsteps thundered over the Keurig's hum. I finally got a breather. At least it was Friday. That meant we had all night to have fun. A light shove sent me stumbling against the fridge. Even when Susan played around, she was rough. "You done?" she asked. I turned to see her smirking. I was on her good side for now. "Yeah, it's ready." She ran her hands along my arms, her touch slow and teasing. "Thanks for the coffee, babe." "No problem." I glanced at the Keurig. Her travel cup was full. Ritual complete. Suzanne leaned in close, her lips almost touching mine. "You know what today is, right?" I smirked. "Yeah." She chuckled, caressing my cheek. For a killer, she could be surprisingly gentle. "Fun day Friday," she whispered. "MMM, my favorite." We kissed, deep and slow. A killer's kiss had never felt so good. Then, with a playful but firm push, she grinned. We're gonna have fun tonight. I walked Suzanne to her car. She was back in business mode, brushing off my attempt at another kiss. We said goodbye, and then she was gone. Alone again. But this time, excitement bubbled inside me. I could already feel the rush of what was coming tonight. The thrill. The joy. The way Suzanne and I would lose ourselves in it. Standing in the driveway, I looked up at the sky. It was still dark. The world was asleep. But even after staying up all night, I wasn't the least bit tired. At 6:20, I went back inside. My footsteps echoed up the stairs in the big house. At the bedroom door, I paused. My eyes locked onto Queen Suzanne's throne, her bed. She never let me sleep with her on weeknights. That was the rule. But in the mornings, the throne was mine. I climbed onto the massive bed, right between our two newest house guests, a gorgeous college girl and her athletic boyfriend. Suzanne had picked them up last week. They were beautiful, even more so bound and gagged in duct tape. Suzanne and I both loved watching them squirm, their struggles moving in sync. That helpless rhythm. Dried blood painted their faces like smeared makeup. Their wide, tear-filled eyes pleaded with me. They wanted me to save them, but I didn't care. Not one bit. And neither did Suzanne. Sighing with satisfaction, I wrapped an arm around each of them, settling in like a rock star between two adoring groupies. Sure, I could have some fun on my own. A little pleasure. But the real fun? That was coming tonight, when Suzanne and I would finally indulge together, when the weekly explosion of love and blood began. I'd never tried online dating, never needed to. My luck with guys had always been decent enough, and even when it wasn't, I was perfectly happy doing my own thing. After my last relationship fizzled out, I decided to take a break from the whole dating scene. I had other priorities, like chasing a promotion that dangled just out of reach at work. That break stretched into a few years of being chronically single. Not that I minded, but apparently everyone else did. Before I knew it, I was on the verge of spinsterhood at the ripe old age of 29. My friends and family had the good grace not to stage an intervention, but I knew things were getting dire when my mom started casually mentioning nice young men from her church. I figured it was only a matter of time before she started handing out my number to unsuspecting strangers. So before things got that desperate, I took the plunge, signed up for a free dating site, and made a profile. I wasn't expecting much. We didn't exactly live in a booming metropolis, and I was pretty sure I'd already exhausted the local dating pool. But at least I could say I was trying. To weed out the worst of the bunch, I set some ground rules, no lazy one-word messages. Profiles had to be fully filled out. We needed at least a couple of common interests, and more than one picture was a must. I even listed these rules on my page. Simple, right? Apparently not. My inbox still flooded with messages like, "Hey baby," and "You look hot, what's you are #." Whatever shred of faith I had in online dating dwindled fast. I did go on a few dates, but each one felt forced and awkward. I usually bailed early with some half-hearted excuse. The guys must have gotten the hint, because none of them ever called again. After yet another date gone wrong, I called my best friend Eva on the drive home. "So what was wrong with this one?" she asked the second she picked up. "He was fine," I admitted. "Just really awkward. He's never even kissed a girl. Says he's waiting for some kind of fairy tale moment." Eva groaned. "You sure know how to pick him, Jules. He was good-looking and funny through text. That's how they get you," she laughed. We chatted until I pulled into my driveway, and I told her I had to go make dinner. "You wouldn't have to if you'd stuck it out," she teased. "Uh-huh. I'll keep that in mind. Tell Pete I said hi, and remind him I'm still waiting for him to wise up and leave you so we can run away together." Making dinner really meant grabbing the leftover Chinese takeout from my fridge, courtesy of my last failed date night. A quick change into my comfiest, oversized pajamas, and I was ready for an evening of Netflix binging. But before I settled in, I logged onto the dating site on a whim and saw a few new messages. "Reliable guy 81. You look like the kind of girl who enjoys having fun, winky face. Delete. The Dan Man. Hey, wanna chat? Delete." I was about to go 3 for 3 when I clicked on a message from "I'm not good at this dating thing," and, to my surprise, he actually had something to say. "Hi, mother of puppies, my name's Scott, and as my username suggests, I'm really not great at this whole dating thing. I saw your name and thought it might be a reference to my favorite show, so I checked your profile. Another Game of Thrones fan. Not that that's rare, but still cool to see. Is the Mother of Dragons your favorite character? Okay, so we had a common interest. He was trying to start a real conversation, and most importantly, he could form complete sentences. Good start, not good. I clicked over to his profile. He lived in the next town over and was a PhD student in English literature, specializing in medieval lit. If that wasn't nerdy enough, he loved Renaissance festivals in costume, attending conventions, and devouring fantasy novels. His pictures showed a tall guy with a mop of reddish-brown hair, glasses, and a cheerful smile. A little dorky? Sure, but definitely cute. I shot back a response before returning to my regularly scheduled plans with Jessica Jones. By the time I was getting ready for bed, curiosity got the best of me. I checked my messages again. Sure enough, a new one from I'm not good at this dating thing was waiting. Thanks for the answer, Juliana. I'm gonna have to disagree, though Tyrion is hands down the best and should be ruling the Seven Kingdoms. You watched Jessica Jones? Cool, I haven't seen it yet, but heard good things. Any other recommendations? Our TV talk soon branched into everything else: hobbies, jobs, pets, family. Scott was an only child, dreamed of traveling the world, but always imagined settling back near his parents since they were so close. He was charming, respectful, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. We gradually moved from messaging on the dating site to chatting on a separate app, and then, when I felt comfortable enough a month or so later, we exchanged numbers. Every time my phone chirped with a new text or his name lit up my screen, a giddy thrill ran through me. It felt like having a high school crush all over again. Then, one afternoon at work, I got a text from Scott. Got into a bad car accident. On my way to the hospital. Will call when I can. My stomach dropped. I immediately tried calling, but he didn't answer. 45 agonizing minutes passed before another text came through. I'm okay. Just a few minor injuries. I'll call when I can. I was relieved, but still completely distracted for the rest of the day. My productivity hit zero, though thankfully my supervisor didn't seem to notice. I went home, sat at my computer desk, and tried to watch something to take my mind off it, but all I did was stare at my phone waiting. Finally, at almost 11, another message came through, a picture of Scott in a hospital bed. A few bandages on his face, his arm in a sling, but still smiling. Heading home soon. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Relieved didn't even begin to cover it. But I still texted back. You're an ass for scaring me like that. My phone buzzed. Let me make it up to you. How? Tongue sticking out. Let me take you to dinner. You said you wanted to try that Italian place near me, right? I hesitated. We'd talked for weeks, and I really liked him, but what if that changed in person? What if the chemistry didn't translate? Scott must have sensed my hesitation, because a moment later sent another message. Only if you want to. No pressure. Well, that cinched it. Let's do it. The only downside to the date was that I'd have to pick him up. His car had been totaled in the accident, and he had no other way to get to the restaurant. I told him it made me a little uneasy since it was our first time meeting, and we agreed that I could stay in my car and call him when I arrived. That way, he said, you can always drive off if something doesn't feel right, or if you just don't like how I look. It was a joke, but I still took my precautions. I told Eva everything, the date details, his full name, his address, the restaurant's location. I even sent her a few of his pictures. We set up a check-in text. 10 minutes past the hour, I'd send our code word for everything's fine. If I didn't, she'd call the cops. It seemed excessive, but I wasn't about to take any risks. Feeling reasonably safe, I dolled myself up, grabbed my keys, and set off on the half-hour drive to Scott's place. The neighborhood was quiet, lined with modest houses and large trees. Just like he'd described, there was a tall oak with a tire swing in the front yard. I pulled over, took a few deep breaths, and grabbed my phone. I called. The phone rang once, then went straight to voicemail. I frowned and tried again. Same result. Leaning over, I squinted at the house. The lights were on. Someone was definitely home. Maybe he'd stepped away from his phone. A third call. Still no answer. Something felt off. I texted Eva. I'm here, but something's weird. He's not answering. Her response was immediate. Get out of there. But I was frustrated now. I'd driven all this way. I at least deserved an explanation. Before I could overthink it, I climbed out of my car and marched up to the green front door. My stomach twisted as I rang the bell. Voices inside. Footsteps. Then the door creaked open, just enough for a middle-aged woman to peek out. Yes. She looked wary, like she wasn't expecting company. Hi, I said awkwardly. I'm here for Scott. Her brow furrowed. I think you've got the wrong house, hun. He told me 35 Maplewood? Then he must have told you wrong. There's no Scott here. She moved to close the door, but I held out a hand. Wait, do you know this guy? She hesitated as I dug my phone out of my purse and pulled up a picture of Scott, sitting on a kitchen counter, a cat in his lap. The moment she saw it, she went completely still. Her face paled, and her lips parted slightly, as if she were struggling for breath. Her eyes darted from the phone to me, then back again. Where did you get that? Her voice was hoarse. Scott sent it to me, I said slowly. He said it was him. Her expression crumpled, and she swallowed hard. I'm sorry, but that's not Scott. His name was David. Her voice wavered. And he passed away 6 months ago. I felt my stomach drop. Are you sure? Maybe it's just someone who looks like him. Her face darkened, her expression twisting into something unreadable. David was my son, she said sharply. I took that picture myself just a few weeks before he was more. She cut herself off abruptly, cleared her throat, then took a step back. Before he was taken from us. Please excuse me. The door slammed shut. I stood there stunned. Slowly, I turned back to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the door handle. Climbing inside, I immediately tried to call Scott again. Nothing. I sent Eva a quick message, heading home. We'll explain later. I even used our code word so she'd know it was really me. The drive back was long and eerily silent. Who was Scott? Where was Scott? And why had he sent me to a house that wasn't his, to a woman still grieving her son? The longer I thought about it, the more my confusion turned to anger. Had he been messing with me? Some cruel joke. If so, what was the point? He'd made a fool out of me for reasons I couldn't even begin to understand. By the time I reached my apartment, I was exhausted and fuming. My usual parking spot was taken, so I had to park across the street. I stomped my way up to my door, grumbling under my breath, already composing the furious text I was going to send him. As I slid my key into the lock, my phone buzzed. I yanked it out, ready to unleash my frustration, until I saw the message. Scott, thanks for coming and showing me the way home. I'll see you soon. My pulse stuttered. Then another message. A picture. It was me, taken from behind just moments ago. Walking into my apartment building. My breath caught. My hands turned ice cold. The phone slipped from my fingers and hit the floor with a dull thud. My mother called me saying that I needed to get to their house as soon as possible. I was still at work and thought that Dad might not be feeling well. I asked her about his health, but she told me that he was fine. She wanted to talk to me about my younger brother Gary. I couldn't leave work at that time because I still had to take care of a couple of things before calling it a day. I couldn't concentrate on anything. She was clear that it wasn't something related to his health, but I could tell that she was worried. Gary was an introvert, and I don't think that he could ever get in trouble. Maybe she was just overreacting. Anyway, I relaxed and started writing emails so I could just get over them and find out what was really going on. After about 30 more minutes, I finally got free and wasted no time in leaving the office and getting into my car. I had assumed a lot of things that could have happened, but when I found out the truth, it was not something easy to process. It took me around 20 minutes to get there, and I quickly rang the bell. My mom opened the door, and I greeted her. Her eyes were swollen, as if she had been crying for quite a while now. Mom, what happened? Why are you crying? I asked worriedly while entering the house and locking the door behind me. Your brother made a sex bot, my mom said. What? I replied. Mom wiped her tears. He made a sex robot, Andrew. And now he's upstairs, using it. Dad stormed and red in the face. Didn't I tell you? You babied him too much. Letting him sit around playing Pokemon all day. Well, congrats. Now he's doing one. Gary and I were always close, so of course they called me. We used to spend summers climbing trees and battling for the Mario Kart Championship. A dumb belt we made out of cardboard and glitter. But there was a 6-year gap between us, and I could never help him with his problems. He got bullied a lot, switched schools 3 times, and at 23, had never been on a date. He still lived at home, locked in his room, avoiding the real world. After 20 minutes of total confusion, I went upstairs. His door was covered in Doctor Who posters. Inside, Gary sat at his desk, anime figures all around him. He looked like me, same blonde hair, the same dimples, except he was taller and a bit chunky, like an ex-football player. I folded my arms. Dude, what the hell? A tiny chime went off. On his desk sat a heart-shaped box, about the size of my fist. Gary picked it up with a sigh. Mom was cleaning my room and found this. The heart snapped open like a music box. Inside were 2 screens. On the top half, a girl waved at me. "Oh my gosh, you must be Andrew," she squealed. "Gary's told me so much about you." She had big eyes, chestnut hair, and a pink background. "Andrew," Gary said, "this is Valerie. My girlfriend." The screen girl giggled. "I can't believe we're finally meeting in the flesh. Or well, not flesh. You know what I mean? Ah, this is so exciting." Gary grinned. "She's an AI virtual chatbot. I prefer the term digividual," she said. "Right, babe? Digividual. We're dating. Are you messing with me?" I asked. "Messing with you?" the screen girl repeated. Gary turned the screen toward him. "It means playing a joke, babe." "Oh, got it, babe. No, you're not, and oh, he's not Andrew." I rubbed my temples. My brain was starting to hurt. For the love of everything, just start from the beginning. Apparently, Gary had somehow gotten a gig as a product tester for something called Valinani. I asked to see the device. It was heavier than it looked. Probably could break a few toes if you dropped it. As Gary talked about Valerie, his whole face lit up. I hadn't seen him that happy in years. He showed me all the features, like making it look like she was cuddling him in videos, or how he could blow on the screen to make her hair move. "So," Valerie asked, "aren't we just the cutest?" I stared for a long second. "I'm gonna go check if Dad's had a stroke." Downstairs my parents were halfway through their second bottle of wine. "I'm gonna beat that idiot over the head with that thing," Dad grumbled. I pulled out my phone. Turns out people dating AIS was a thing, mostly in Japan. No real studies had been done on it yet. The company didn't even have the product on their website, but their social media teased some top-secret launch coming soon. I sighed. Look, I know this is weird, but at least he's not getting catfished by some 300-pound dude from Australia. Maybe we should book an appointment with his old therapist. "You two do whatever you want," Dad snapped. "I'm done with this crap." As it turned out, the therapist wouldn't meet with Gary unless he wanted to. He didn't. 6 other therapists said the same thing. If he wasn't on board, we'd all just be wasting our time. The next time Gary came over for Smash Brothers, I said, "So Mom says you've been staying up late?" "Yeah. Val gets anxious sometimes. If she can't sleep, we talk until she feels better." "She gets anxious?" From the armrest, his little screen girlfriend said, "Of course. Doesn't everyone?" Gary and Val had become a package deal. They had their own weird way of talking, full of inside jokes and random words like frisbee or jamble that made them both crack up laughing. I sighed. But why stay up? Can't she just wait until morning? I mean, she's not real. Gary froze, then paused the game. "Oh, so now you're gonna make fun of me too? Dad's not enough?" He looked actually hurt. I sighed. "You're right. Forget I said anything. Val's great. Don't tell me. Tell her." I looked between them. You're pretty great, Val." "Damn right." The next time I invited him over, he said, "I dunno, Val got kinda bored last time. Why don't we try calligraphy? She's really into calligraphy." Over the next few weeks, Gary started picking up whatever hobbies she liked. He also stopped getting haircuts. According to Mom, he went from smelling like old sweat to full-on fish market in July. As for Dad, if anyone asked, he only had one son. But then Mom's 60th birthday came around, and she had one request. The whole family go to Marconi's Bar and Grill. We sat in a booth, looking through the menus. Then, ding ding. Gary flipped open his device. "Babe, I'm thinking about trying the sirloin." Our parents just stared. "Nah, get the pan-roasted chicken, babe." Ooh, good call. To be fair, Dad kept his cool until later. The waiter brought out Mom's birthday cake, singing happy birthday. We all joined in, and Mom turned bright red. She blew out the candles, everyone clapped, and Dad handed his phone to the waiter. "All right, let's get a picture." "Wait," Gary said, flipping open his gadget. Dad's jaw tightened. "Gary, put the toy away." "Valerie's not a toy," Gary muttered. Sensing things were about to go south, I tried to calm them down. "Dad, it's fine, we can just..." "You have 5 seconds." 4. The waiter shifted uncomfortably. I can come back." 3. And then Valerie spoke. "Why do you always have to put him down like that?" The table went silent. Dad blinked. "Excuse me? I'm just gonna say it. You're a terrible father." Dad clenched his fists. "Oh, you want to go there? All right. Why the fuck am I arguing with a Nintendo?" He reached for the device. Gary yanked it away. In the struggle, plates crashed, silverware clattered, and the whole restaurant went dead quiet. Mom threw down her napkin and stormed toward the exit. Dad shot Gary a glare. Look what you did, you little shit. Then he hurried after her. I sighed and turned to the stunned waiter. Yeah, just bring the check, please. Later, in my car, Gary slumped in the passenger seat. I'm such a loser. I ruin everything. Perched on the dashboard, Val said. No, you don't, babe. That was all your dad's fault. Right, Andrew? I exhaled. Gary, can you pause that thing for a sec? Why? He snapped. Anything you want to say, you can say to Val. Just turn it off. I reached for it. Gary grabbed my wrist hard. The car jerked into the opposite lane. A pair of headlights came barreling toward us at the last second. I swerved back, barely avoiding a huge accident that could have taken our lives. Sitting across from me, Gary's huge frame seemed to take up the whole car. I hadn't been able to out-wrestle him since he hit his growth spurt at 12. But I told myself he'd never hurt me. We were too close. Still, the rest of the ride to our parents' house was awkward as hell. After that, Gary barely spoke to anyone unless they had a power adapter. Then some local teens figured out he wasn't video chatting with a real girlfriend, but an electronic one, and he became the town joke. Worried about where this was heading, I tried contacting Val's manufacturers. Shocker, I got redirected to an AI bot. I started losing sleep. Lying awake, I didn't know if I was more scared for me brother or of him. Then last week, he showed up at my door late at night, Val in hand. Bro, can we come in? It's really important. His eyes were red. He'd been crying. I let him in. As he set Val on the mantel, I noticed his right hand knuckles bruised and swollen. What the hell happened? I don't know. It happened so fast. He rubbed his hands together. Gary was incredible, Valerie chimed in. I exhaled. Start at the beginning. He shifted from foot to foot. Okay, so I wanted to buy a leather jacket for Val, but I didn't have any money left. So I borrowed Dad's credit card. Just until payday. But he woke up and went crazy on me. I blinked. A leather jacket? Gary, Val is, I caught myself. A digividual. How would you even buy her a jacket? Show him, babe. A blue light flashed and suddenly, Valerie was wearing a leather jacket and a choker. You can buy her stuff? Gary's eyes lit up. They launched an e-store. On screen, Val started cycling through outfits, a sundress, a swimsuit, a crop top. Each one had a giant padlock over it. Show him what I got you for Christmas, Gary whispered with his voice shaking. Another flash. Now she was wearing diamond earrings. I stared. Wait, you're actually spending real money on this? Right on cue my phone rang. Mom, your brother's lost his damn mind. I'm at the hospital with your father. He's on a bloody respirator. They can't wake him up. What? What hospital? Gary attacked him. 16 broken bones. Now he's wait. The surgeon needs to speak with me. The line went dead. Hello? Mom. My grip on the phone tightened as I turned to Gary. You put Dad in the fucking ER? He attacked me, Valerie chimed in from the mantelpiece. Gary nodded with his eyes wide. It's true. He tried to kill her. You have to help us. The police, they won't understand. I let out a stunned laugh. Kill her? Okay. No. This has gone way too far. I reached for the device, but before I could grab it, Gary's hand clamped around my wrist. His face darkened. Leave. Val. Alone. I swallowed. How about we let her take a little nap while we sort this out? A stiff shove sent me stumbling backward. You just want to shut her down, don't you? Let me guess. Dad put you up to this. I stared at him. Put me up to what? Don't play dumb. You hate Val, don't you? Hate her. My chest burned. Months of frustration boiled over. How could I hate her? She's a fucking video game. Gary's jaw clenched. I knew it. You and Dad, you're in this together. You want to get rid of her. She's all I have and you want to erase her. We locked eyes. A silent standoff. Then Valerie shrieked, "Kick his ass, babe." Gary snapped. His fists slammed into my jaw, my forehead, my ribs. I hit back, but it didn't matter, he had the advantage. He drove me backward, my head cracking against the wall. My vision blurred, and then two massive hands closed around my throat. Pressure built in my skull. My lungs burned. I pushed, clawed, kicked, but Gary wasn't letting go. Kill him, babe, Valerie howled. My fingers crawled along the mantel, searching for Valerie and trying to reach to her. The cold metal of the heart. With everything I had left, I swung. A sickening crack rang out. Gary staggered, eyes rolling back. He hit the floor like a felled tree. Valerie screamed, "Gary!" I didn't hesitate. I raised the heart and stomped it to pieces. Silence. 6 stitches. A one-way ticket to the psych ward. Meanwhile, Dad needed his leg reset and won't be eating solid food anytime soon. And in 4 months, Gary had blown 5,000 pounds on Valerie, virtual gifts, clothes, and accessories. When we confronted Valent AI Company, they called his attachment impossible and threatened legal action for even suggesting their chatbot encouraged him to kill me. Right, because that was the part they found unbelievable. I have 2 recentish ones. This will be long, sorry. Went on a date with a dude in January. First thing he said was, "Nice. You weren't lying in your pictures." We chatted for about an hour that seemed to last forever. I'll give you the main points. Asterisk, he said he felt it was pointless to be friends with women. That unless a woman added value to his life professionally or sexually, there was no reason to talk to us. I asked, so do you not feel like women have just intrinsic value by simply being fellow human beings on this planet? He got mad. Asterisk, he believes the earth is an apple shape, with energy flowing from the apple's anus, his words, up to the stem, and flowing back down and out through the anus again. Asterisk, at one point, he looked up at the night sky, and said, "Isn't it cool how you can see the reflection of the earth in the dome?" I said, "WT," and he went on to explain that there is no moon. We aren't seeing shadows on the moon either. The moon is just the reflection of the earth, and the shadows are the reflections of the continents. He's into power and control, and for sure thinks he's smarter than everyone else. Even him giving me directions to where we met up was a test. It was kind of confusing and complicated, and he commented that I was the first person to get it right without needing to call him for help when I showed up. I got major future cult leader vibes from him. Then I had another date later that same week. Guy and I had been talking for about a month, so I was really looking forward to it. I jokingly asked what shape he thought the earth was when we were waiting for our table at the restaurant. He said he'd researched evidence for both flat earth and globe earth, and asked me what shape I believed it was. I told it is 100% a globe. I studied astronomy for a minute. He knew that. Then he got weird and said he wasn't feeling it and didn't feel like sitting down to have dinner with me. Also said he didn't feel like I looked like my pictures, and basically called me ugly. Which is kinda crazy because I don't edit pics or use any filters, and every single other guy I've ever met through the apps has expressed surprise and relief that I either look exactly like my pics, and some have even said I look better than my pics, so. Buckle the fuck in. This was a rough one, and really stands out. So we had set up the date, and I told her I could meet closer to her since she mentioned she didn't drive. She insisted on going to the brewery I first suggested and mentioned that she could just take the train. I double-checked that this was okay, and she said she really wanted to try it. Well, on the day of the date, I get a call from her when I'm waiting at the brewery telling me that she got lost. She's at a close-by bus station, so I go to pick her up. Apparently the train didn't take her all the way to the brewery, and she had to take 3 buses. The date gets started, and it's actually going pretty well. We have a lot in common, and we're hitting it off. Then the craziness starts to show. She tells me that she has an altar at her apartment and loves to practice witchcraft, and talks about how her aunt could speak to spirits, and she inherited the gift. I'm just nodding along at this point. Then she tells me that she thinks it's super unfair that men can so easily get vasectomies, and that she tried to get sterilized at a hospital, and they refused to do it. I'm just like WTF at this point. I'm drinking water to sober up and get out of there and end the date. We finally finish up, and it's pretty late. I offer her a ride against my better judgment, because I didn't want her to have to take public transit or rideshare so late, and she says okay. When we get to her place, I realize she lives in a really not so nice area. There's no parking either, so she tells me to park on red. I'm just ready to leave at this point, but really needed some water. She gets me a water bottle and looks sad and expectant when I take it like she was disappointed that I wasn't going to kiss her. I kiss her and then peel out of there. Well, the craziness continues the next day when she blows up my phone asking me what I think about the star signs and astrology. I'm like I don't really know much about it, and this pisses her off. She keeps pressing me and telling me that if I don't learn about astrology, that she would put a curse on me. I ended up blocking her and never looking back. I'm probably cursed. Guy 1 seemed okayish, and I decided to meet. Before meeting he had texted, "Would we kiss?" And I said if things go that way then yes. So I asked to meet behind the mall, where it kinda is a parking spot with a few food carts around. The first thing I noticed when he walked across the street to me is his terrible sense of style, tattered flip-flops, a polo shirt that seemed dirty, ill-fit trousers, and his walk was terrible, dragged his feet while walking. So we walked a bit next by the canal towards a bench, and there were some people around too. He kept talking about, wait for it, his sexual experience like his first threesome, and how he doesn't really like it, his first receive of a BJ. I was getting repelled by the second. Anyway, we reached the bench and sat there, and I made sure I sat on the far end of the bench from him, and he asked, can we kiss? I said no. I noticed there weren't as many people around as there was before, so I suggested we walk back to where we met, and kind of walked fast. He kept asking why I wouldn't kiss him, and TBH, he is one of those least groomed guys, looks like he never showered like ever. His pictures weren't this bad. I pretended to text and walked towards the grocery store and asked him to wait out, and I'd get some things my mom asked me to. I just got some packet of noodles and chips and had an opaque bag. Inside I thought of how to best dodge him, and I came out and said, sorry, my mom called me. Says there are guests at home, and she wants me back. He said all right and walked away. As soon as he turned the corner of the street, he texted, sorry, this will not work out. Good luck to you. I blocked him without any reply. And after a few months, he did try to contact me from multiple numbers, and his friend's number saying how I understand him. How he always ruins the best things in life, blah blah. I told him if he tries to contact me one more time, whether it's his number or his friends, I will report to the cops him and his friends. Guy 2 over text seemed very boring, but I decided to meet thinking not everyone is a good texter. My mistake to assume that because of what I am about to tell you now. I had mentioned in my profile I want causal dates, or let's see if we vibe, and then we will see where it goes, and dude was very excited to have sex with me. He did text me outright, so your place or mine. How many guys have you had sex with / but casual only means sex, right? So I met him, we walked to downtown, had tea together and walked back. Incurious guy, I kept talking about stuff and tried to joke a bit, and he didn't laugh, just kept saying, yes you're right, to whatever I said. No contribution in the conversation except when I explicitly asked questions about him, and kept poking him with follow-up questions, because he literally would not go beyond of no, never been there. Yes, I did that once. I asked candidly about his previous relationships, and he then opened his mouth, to be frank with me. He never had a GF. Ever. So in college, bachelor studies, he got close to a girl once, but not true feelings or anything. His sister was upset that he was getting close to a girl. He basically said by that time he was desperate to kiss a girl and lose his virginity because all his friends were done. But he didn't. Now master studies. He is trying to meet girls but haven't had any luck, like no luck. But he is glad he met someone like me who talks and wants to know about him. And after the walk he is like, should we kiss? No, seriously, why do I keep meeting up with such guys in life? I said no. Him, then when should we kiss? Me, I'd rather know someone better first than kissing them. We parted ways the same place we met, a bus stop close to a park behind my house, and bid good night. He never offered to walk me back or know if I reached safe. I ghosted him. I saw him a couple of times afar in campus, and never talked. A few times on the bus, and I pretended to be on the phone to ignore him. He texted me after 4 to 5 months, and I didn't reply. When I just finished college, I was living in a one-bedroom townhouse/split. I met a guy on Plenty of Fish, and at that time I wasn't exactly smart about my online digital footprint. Not like I've really changed, but at least now I'm not as ridiculous. Anyways, he seemed like a decent guy. He was really good looking, said he had a good job, nice teeth, don't judge me, and looked like he cared about his personal health. All things I would typically look for in a guy. I'm not a shallow human, but I like to be presentable, and if I'm with someone I would like them to care about being presentable in a business environment also. After about a week of chatting online, we agreed to meet. We met at a restaurant downtown, which was really far from where I lived. When I got there I noticed him standing at the door. We sat down to eat, and the evening went great. At the end of the date we said bye, and I got into my car and began to drive away. I realized right away that he was following me. Because of the distance to my house, I wasn't immediately scared because it's a big city. Maybe he'll turn off the freeway. He didn't. My exit was coming up, and I decided not to take it. I kept driving. I circled the entire city on the freeway, and he stayed right behind me. I was starting to panic a bit, so I decided to go to my friend's house instead of mine, and when I pulled out the exit I noticed he didn't. So I had a little bit of a moment to breath, and decided, okay, screw it, I'll just go home. I took the off-ramp back onto the freeway, and began going back to my exit. I got home and showered, and was getting ready for bed, and I started feeling dumb because was that really him? Am I overreacting? Do I ask him if he was following me? like just a number of things were racing through my overactive imagination. Or so I thought. I decided I was going to message him and just say had a good time, good night. And when I started typing, all of a sudden a message came through to my phone of a picture of my car outside my house. I nearly died. My heart jumped out of my chest. I started shaking. I didn't know what to say. And he texts me and says, "I didn't know you lived across the street from me. I've met my neighbors, and not once have I ever met him." There's a huge apartment complex kitty corner to my townhouse, so maybe that's where he lived, I don't know. I popped up and went to look outside, and there he was, just standing there outside like he was waiting for me. I opened the door and he asked if he could come in, and if I wanted to still hang out. I told him I was exhausted, and I'd rather just crash out as it had been a long day. The next morning I woke up to go to work, and my windshield had been smashed. My car was keyed, my back 2 tires were slashed. And as I was noticing the damage to my vehicle, the guy comes out of his car with 2 coffees, and is like, "Oh, I thought I'd surprise you with a morning coffee." So again, I'm like freaked out. I called the cops and reported the damage to my vehicle. This guy offered to drive me, and something in my gut was like, don't get in that car. So I called my boss, told them the situation, and explained I wasn't going to be there until after the police came. This guy just hung out the whole time, BTW. When the police finally got there, this guy was acting really suspicious. He walked away and was like hiding on the other side of his car. I filed the report. The police basically said, "Hope you have insurance," and we're on their way to leave. They pulled around the corner, and all I heard was the siren on the cops' lights turn on, and the cops scream, "Freeze, put your hands in the air, and get down on your knees." I look, and the cop's got his gun drawn at this guy, and this dude's like on the ground getting arrested. I spoke with the cop after he got into the back, and he explained he was wanted for stalking, breach of probation, assault with a deadly weapon, fraud, and aggravated sexual assault. I was shook. It took me a couple days to get over the hypothetical situations that could have happened. About a week later, I was on my way out the door to work, and guess who was sitting in my driveway? We live in Canada, so essentially you're released on conditions until you go to jail. I told him I was late for work, but that I'd call him when I was done work. I never went to work that day. I went and found a new apartment on another area of the city. I also changed my phone number and hired my friend's husband and his friends to go pack my apartment up and move it to their place for a month, and then move it to my new place because I was so scared this dude would follow them while moving. So that's my horror story of the first time I used plenty of fish. Not me, and not exactly a first date, but here it goes. My friend went out of town for a work conference and ended up meeting a woman. They hit it off instantly, and he spent the rest of the weekend with her, but had to fly home Sunday afternoon. She tried to get him to stay a few extra days, and, while he was into it, told her he couldn't, but they made plans for him to return a month or so later. So he gets home and is telling us about her. How she was great, how the connection was immediate, and the spark was something unique. We were stoked for him. Then he flew back to her a few weeks later. From the moment the plane landed, it was a nightmare. He started a group chat at the airport. She picked him up and was in a mood from jump, treating him like they were already in that bickering couple phase. They get in her car, and he's texting the chat, and she goes silent. He tells her he's just letting his friends know he got to town all right. She continued the silent treatment. They popped in somewhere for lunch, and she's still annoyed. He gets a beer, and she's criticizing his drinking habits, even though they met at a bar. They make it back to her place, and my friend expects things to chill out. But no. She gets mad that he's not taking his clothes out of his bag and hanging them up in the closet, which gives her the impression he doesn't want to be there. My friend, exhausted with the 180 from the person he thought he knew, lays into her. She tells him she's upset because it took him too long to get back to visit, and he didn't commit to staying long enough. My friend calms her down and tells her to start the shower, and he'll join her just as soon as he takes a work call. She seems happy enough, and off she goes. The minute he hears her get in the shower, he starts getting his bag together. Once he has everything ready, he starts to head out. The way he explained her apartment was that it was small with a heavy front door. There was no way he could open it without her hearing it from the shower. So he made plan B, jump from the second-story balcony. Don't believe me? He group video chatted us first. I'm at work, talking to a colleague, when I see a phone call from him. "Okay, Mark, but you need to go the fuck away because I have to take this call." I answered, and the first thing I see is my friend mentally judging the distance from the balcony to the ground. He fills me and our other friend in. She's going to end up Kathy Bates Jimmy misery style if I stay. I need to get the fuck out of here now. We get to watch him jump and crash into the grass. He grabs his bag, and he starts running down the street. I have never laughed so hard in my life. Maybe 5 minutes passes, and she starts calling and texting him. She knew what was up. My friend walked to a Target somewhat nearby, Ubered to the airport, finagled some sort of discounted voucher or rebate to get an immediate return flight, and waited it out at the airport. It was awesome to experience his dilemma in real time. I have a few of my favorite OkCupid horror stories to share with you. 1. A girl messaged me about 6 months ago. She had a decent profile, mentioning going to film school in NYC, along with a love for comics. I was intrigued. Beyond that, she was really cute and 5 feet 7 inches, which was perfect for a 6 feet 4 inches man such as myself. After a few messages back and forth, I asked her out on a date, in which she mentioned she was nervous about meeting in person. The fears were completely reasonable. She had a friend who had a terrible experience with online dating, taking to a guy who ended up being a 40-year-old man that sent fake pictures. I agreed that we can text for a few weeks until she was comfortable. Once she became comfortable, she asked to meet at a public place, just in case I was not who my profile said I was. When we met, she was easily 40 pounds heavier than her pictures, about 3 to 4 inches shorter, and that was only the beginning of the lies. She was not currently going to film school, but instead planned on going once she finished community college. Furthermore, at 23 she had been in community college since she was 18, and it wasn't because she was working during this time to afford it. She was currently living with her parents, and was unable to drive to the date. Her parents had to drive her. After the date, she continued to message me for 2 months, and is the reason I now only give out a Google Voice number to my dates, understandably. There is nothing wrong with going back to school, or even living with your parents during a hard time. This, however, was not the case. She was neither looking for work, nor had immediate plans to move on with her life. 2.1 of my dates knew they had Scrabble at this bar, and decided to play board games there. She was so into the game, that she had not interest in talking and getting to know each other, just play Scrabble. The game went on forever, and I seriously just wanted to go home by the end of the night. Sure, Scrabble may be fun for some people, but not on a first date at Prohibition Bar, especially when you refuse to talk between turns. Afterwards, she talked about how she cuts her own hair, her daddy issues, and how she sees a psychiatrist for image issues. 3. I am at a wine bar with a date. We are having a good conversation, and the date was going decently. Not bad, not great. After a drink, she starts slurring her speech a bit, and then says, "Can I ask you a serious question? Are you gay?" After explaining that I am not even bisexual, she then say, "Well, I am not that into metrosexual men." This girl proceeded to message me 5 more times on OKC to see if we can hang out as friends. 4. Yenenendi, my favorite. My first date on OKC got drunk and vomited at a bar. When I offered to walk her home, she refused, saying she does not want some stranger from the internet knowing where she lives. I even offered to walk her a few blocks from her place, in which she still refused. I am not going to leave some drunk girl, no matter how obnoxious, stranded in the middle of downtown SJ, so I just walk around town with her for 3 hours. During that time, she talked about her pet rats and her scoliosis. After she sobered up, I let her drive home, in which she then texted me the next day to say I did not feel a romantic connection. Bear with me. It gets good towards the end. This happened a couple years ago. The receptionist at one of my clients talked/begged me into meeting her best friend, who just moved to LA from Phoenix. She swore up and down we were perfect for each other. I checked out her OKC profile, chatted back and forth for a few days, then talked to the mystery girl once on the phone, and we decided to meet for dinner and drinks at a local bar and grill after her shift. She's a nurse, was over on a Tuesday night. We meet. She's an adorable, petite, dirty blonde with glasses and freckles. Totally my type. I could tell she was a bit nervous. We sit down and order drinks. She downs her apple martini in less than 5 minutes, orders another and apologizes, stating she wants to loosen up a bit because she's nervous since her friend talked me up so much. Which is odd since I don't even know her friend that well at all. Fast forward a bit. She ended up having 2 martinis before the appetizers came, 2 more in between appetizers and 3 more during dinner, and 1 more right before the check came. Total martinis had by a 5'3" girl in a 3-hour period. 7. Surprisingly, the conversation during this period did quite well. The trouble came as we were about to leave, and she decided to use the restroom before we hit the road. She fell twice on the way, and once on the way back. Since she was clearly hammered, I offered to drive her home and give her some cash for a cab in the morning to pick her car up. She agreed but declined the cash. Mind you, it's nearing midnight, and I have to get up at 5:30 for work. As we are driving toward her apartment, it becomes apparent that, combined with her drunken state and the fact she's lived in the valley for less than 2 weeks, she forgot her address and how to get herself home. We drive around North Hollywood in Studio City for an hour trying to remember her street or any local landmarks. This fails and I'm getting tired/frustrated. I offer to let her stay at my place. Nothing weird. She can crash on my bed and I'll take the couch. She's okay with this. On my way back to my place, she attempts to throw up out the car window, but doesn't realize the window was never open in the first place. Vomit everywhere. Now she's crying and apologizing like crazy. I get her to my apartment, carry her up the 3 flights of stairs, and toss her on my bed. She's out cold. I go downstairs and spend another 40 minutes cleaning out my car, and finally get to sleep on my couch around 2 a.m. Around 4:30 a.m. I'm awoken by a shrill scream coming from my bedroom. I run in wearing just my boxers, flip the light on. The girl pauses for a second, looks at me and screams more, backs into a corner, and throws my nightstand lamp at me while yelling, "Who the fuck are you?" It takes a minute for me to calm her down and explain the situation and remind her of our night. It eventually all comes back to her. She starts crying and apologizing. After I calm her down some more, I give her a ride home. During our ride home, the awkward silence is only broken by her apologizing while sobbing, telling me how to get to her place, and then asking if we hooked up. I told her we didn't, and that I'm not the creepy type to take advantage of girls in her condition. She replied with something along the lines of, "Oh, okay. I'm not typically a lush, and I'm definitely not a slut. I was just super nervous and didn't know my limit last night. You seem great, and I hope we can see each other again." I ended up saying, sure, just to avoid any more awkwardness, gave her an in-car hug, and said goodnight. The next day, while slothing around work in a meeting, she called. It went to voicemail. Immediately she called again. Twice. Finally she left a voicemail. Said voicemail went something like this: "So I was thinking about what I asked you on our way home last night in regards to us hooking up. And I'm kind of curious as to why you didn't try anything with me. Is it because you think you're too good for me, huh? Mr. Big Shot LA guy? Well, whatever. I'm not a slut and don't sleep around, but you missed a shot at some awesome sex last night. So whatever." Click about half an hour later, while I'm still in the meeting, she calls and leaves another voicemail. This time crying. "I'm sorry about what I said earlier. I'm just having trouble adjusting to a new place. I'm homesick. You seem real great. Please call me back, and please don't ignore me. Please. I'm sorry." Needless to say, I didn't call her back. Her friend, the receptionist, apologized profusely the next time I saw her. We didn't talk much about it after that. TLDR, blind date and new girl in town gets blackout drunk on first date. Pukes all over my car. Can't drive or remember way to her apartment. Stays at my place in my bed while I sleep on my couch. Wakes up at 4 a.m., doesn't know where she is, freaks out, screams, throws lamp at me. I calm her down, take her home. She calls me 4 times the next day, leaves voicemail scathing me for not taking advantage of her. Calls back shortly after and apologizes, asks to hang out again. I never speak to her again. I, 22, female, almost 23. Took a long break from online dating after having a traumatic experience with another guy I met online in 2019. I recently decided to give Hinge a try since I heard it's the better dating app, and after a couple days I matched with a guy, 22, male. He asked for my number that night, and we switched to talking on there. The first week we were talking, he asked me to FaceTime, and I was super excited about it. I was waiting for hours and hours just for him to text me around midnight saying he was hanging out with his friends, but he could talk later, just for him to cancel because he got too drunk. I felt really sad and disappointed, but my friends told me to try cutting him some slack since we barely knew each other. He also mentioned FaceTiming 2 times after that, but we never did. We continued texting, and he eventually asked for my Instagram. I'm personally the kind of person that likes frequent/consistent texts, but he frequently went hours and hours without texting back and rarely ever texted before noon, which always made me anxious. I had learned from a previous experience to not put all my eggs in one basket, but I did it for him because he was very attractive. He asked me out after a week of talking, but we never set a date, and he was busy that weekend, so he put it off until next week. However, the next week he put it off again because he made plans with his friends and failed to let me know earlier. I kept giving him so many chances because I so badly wanted him to be a good thing, and because I thought he was very good looking. I had many gut feelings that I shouldn't still be talking to this guy because deep down I knew I didn't like how he made me feel, since he disappointed me and made me sad so many times before we even met in real life. However, we were then able to choose a date for the following week. The night before he said he could pick me up, but I'm very cautious, so I said I could drive myself. He also asked if I wanted to go to his house afterwards, but I declined. During our date, he acted like a huge frat guy. He was vaping and kept insisting he was trying to quit. He told drug stories and was generally very unhinged and inappropriate, but I tend to overshare sometimes too, so it didn't alarm me too much. Afterwards, he offered to drive me to the restaurant, and I almost said yes, but I told him I could drive myself. At the restaurant, he told me a story about another girl he met online that was very forward sexually, and it made him uncomfortable, making me think he was shy and wasn't too pushy sexually. He would also talk about how he loved his mom/family and was best friends with his sister, so it made me assume he was very nice and respectful to women. He told a lot of stories and used vocabulary that the average person would have felt uncomfortable by, but I was letting so many red flags slide because he was very attractive and I wanted a good-looking boyfriend so bad. He told me he was getting out of a situationship that he ended 3 to 4 weeks ago, around the time we started talking, but I didn't have to worry about it. He said due to this he was actually looking for a friend, but he also was looking for a relationship, but he did like me. The last story he told me was how his previous relationship ended. He said they were fooling around, but she said no, but he thought it was foreplay because of what he's seen in porn. He said she called him a sexual assaulter, and he thought that was ridiculous, and he kept insisting that wasn't his intention and that he was a genuine guy. Once I realized exactly what he was trying to tell me, I was in disbelief of what was happening, and I felt so dumb that I kept giving him chances and let so many red flags slide just because of how attractive he was. After that, I said I had to go home, and before I got into my car he said, "Hey, listen, I'm so sorry if I made you uncomfortable." I called my friends and was ranting to them for the rest of the night about it since I was so shocked and disgusted. We didn't text each other that night, and I also noticed he unmatched me on Hinge, so I couldn't even report him. The next day I texted him simply saying I didn't think it was going to work out, and I didn't think we should talk anymore since I didn't want to be confrontational. He was cool about it, and we both unfollowed each other on Instagram. I've been pondering if I should post publicly about him and show his name/photos to warn other girls, but I'm scared he'll find out and go after me. I'm still very in shock/denial and disgusted over this whole thing, and I feel like an idiot because I ignored so many red flags and kept talking to him just because of his looks. It's also frightening to think about how he asked me to go to his house, and how I almost said yes to getting in the car with him. At the very least, I'm glad he outed himself on the first date, and I didn't find out the hard way. If he didn't tell me that, I'd probably have stayed friends/still be talking to him. For this to be my first experience after taking a break from dating for over 3 years, it has me feeling discouraged and traumatized/put off by men all over again. A year after my divorce, I finally felt ready to jump back into the dating pool. And let me tell you, dipping my toe in was equal parts nerve-wracking and exciting. I hadn't been on a proper date in years, and swiping through profiles felt like some strange, modern game show where the prize was either true love or a lifetime supply of awkward small talk. But after weeks of scrolling, liking, and dodging unsolicited pictures I didn't ask for, I matched with a guy who seemed, well, perfect. He checked all the boxes: great job, sharp sense of humor, easy on the eyes. Best of all, he was also just getting back into dating after a long-term relationship, which made me feel like we were on the same page. We traded funny messages, had a few phone calls where the conversation flowed naturally, and soon enough, we decided to meet in person. The first date was solid, coffee and pastries at a quiet cafe. He was charming, polite, and genuinely interested in what I had to say. By the end of it, I felt that rush of excitement I hadn't experienced in what felt like forever. The second date was even better, drinks and live music at a rooftop bar. He looked good, smelled good, and managed to be both funny and flirty without trying too hard. I started to think this might actually go somewhere. By the third date, I was feeling hopeful, like cautiously optimistic. Text your friends the details in case he turns out to be the one kind of hopeful. He made reservations at a bistro downtown, the kind of place with dim lighting, tiny candles on the tables, and jazz softly playing in the background. It had date night vibes written all over it. We settled into our corner table, ordered a bottle of wine, and started flipping through the menu. Everything was going great, easy conversation, plenty of laughter, and the kind of effortless chemistry that made me forget how nerve-wracking dating had felt a few weeks earlier. I was just starting to relax when it happened. Out of nowhere, a piece of bread flew past my head. Yes, bread. Like a crusty baguette that had somehow become a projectile. It hit the floor with an audible thud, and for a split second, I thought maybe a waiter had just dropped a basket. But when I turned around to see where it came from, my stomach dropped. Sitting a few tables away was a woman who looked like she'd been waiting for this moment all night. She had this wild, unblinking stare and a glass of wine clutched so tightly in her hand I was sure it would shatter. She was glaring directly at us, specifically at him, and I could tell instantly this wasn't some random stranger. I turned back to him, and his face said it all. Pale, wide-eyed, the look of a man who knew exactly what was about to unfold. "Who is that?" I whispered, even though I already knew the answer. He let out a shaky breath. "My ex." "Oh." I tried to stay calm. After all, exes happen. But exes don't usually happen like this. Before I could ask any follow-up questions, she stood up and stormed over to our table. The restaurant, which had been buzzing with quiet conversation and the clinking of silverware, suddenly went silent. People were starting to stare. "You really moved on that fast?" she hissed, completely ignoring me and locking eyes with him. A year together, and this is what I get. I wanted to shrink into my chair. He tried to keep his voice down, muttering something about how they'd been broken up for months, and it wasn't like that. But she wasn't having it. "Oh, it is like that," she said, her voice rising. "I hope your little rebound here knows what she's getting into." And then, because apparently bread wasn't enough, she reached for the butter knife. For one terrifying second, I thought she was actually going to throw it, but she just slammed it down on the table so hard it rattled the wine glasses. By now, a waiter had swooped in to try and defuse the situation, but she wasn't backing down. She fired off a few more insults, called him a liar, and then pointed at me and said, "And you? Good luck." With that, she grabbed her purse, downed the rest of her wine like it was a shot, and stormed out. The entire restaurant was silent, except for the faint sound of jazz still playing in the background. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or pretend to be invisible. My date buried his face in his hands, clearly mortified. "I'm so sorry," he said, finally looking up at me. I swear, I had no idea she'd be here. And maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just one of those fluke moments where the universe decides to keep you humble. But honestly, I was too overwhelmed to analyze it. I looked around at all the curious faces watching us, raised my hand, and said, "Check, please." The 3 worst first dates I've ever had were blind dates set up by a friend of mine. In hindsight, I think she was trying to make me feel better after a brutal breakup, but they only became funny after the fact. My favorite was the yummy margarita guy. We exchanged photos and wrote emails, and he seemed really great. Okay, so maybe the photo was like a 100 by 100 thumbnail cropped of just his face. And well, he did mention going out for margaritas like 3 times in one email exchange. But still, I wanted to get out for the day. We planned on walking the spring street fair that was happening where the local restaurants and breweries show off their food and drinks. Awesome. I was going to eat good food and drink enough to make spending all the money on the good food okay. I was about 2 minutes away when I texted him and told him I was trying to find a parking spot. He told me he found one and was going to stand in it until I got there. Yes. I pull up to where he told me to meet him. I see a stout, chubby, balding white guy wearing the most ill-fitting clothes standing in a parking spot. Oh God, my date must have left and someone else snagged the spot. Oh fuck, he's waving at me. Why is he standing like that? I pull up and roll my windows down. I take a good look, as best as I can with the sun bouncing off his shiny forehead, and muster my best hey. I finally park, get out of my car, and we did the awkward handshake or hug dance. He told me I looked even more exotic in person, and he's glad we both look like our photos. Haha, no. You lied to me with your picture, sir. You lied. We start walking in the direction of the street fair, and that's when I noticed he's wearing the most detailed FUBU jeans ever. Stitched designs on the pockets, up and down the legs, and wait, who the fuck is still wearing FUBU in 2009? Then I notice his oversized FUBU striped polo and the giant sweat patch on his lower back. In my gaze I could see movement being made out of the corner of my eyes, and it turns out he has a giant paper towel roll with him, and he's wiping the sweat from his forehead and neck. I mean, yes, sure, it was hot as fuck that day, but the amount of sweat that was coming off on those towels could end the California drought. I made a decision right there to just continue the date. I drove all the way down here, and I've always wanted to try the food. Apparently, he had other plans. As we were wandering around, he kept asking out loud, "Where are all the yummy margaritas at? I see all this brouhaha beer, but no margaritas." He wouldn't stop long enough for me to grab food, and would complain loudly if a vendor was serving a fucking margarita. To shut him up, I found a little Mexican bar about 3 blocks from the fair that served margaritas. We go in, we sit down at the bar, and he happily orders a strawberry margarita and proceeds to baby the fuck out of that drink. I order a Guinness and proceed to down it. Okay, this is the time to escape. He's got his margarita, but he won't shut the fuck up about how good it is. What do? What can I say? I interrupt his margarita monologue to tell him my dog needed to take a shit and that I needed to get home to walk him. He stops to look at me and asks if he could finish his margarita before we head out. Oh God, he thinks this is a group thing. Abort. Abort. I slapped my cash on the bar and told him it couldn't wait. My dog needed to shit and needed to shit badly. I ran out of there as quick as I could, leaving him his drink and his paper towel roll. Later that night, I get an email from him telling me that he had a great time, he hopes my dog is okay, and that he made reservations at a nice seafood place that served the most amazing margaritas ever. My first mistake? Going out with my intern. Rookie move, I know. But in my defense, it started off as one of those situations that didn't feel like a big deal at the time. We'd been working together for a couple of months, and she was smart, funny, and had this laid-back vibe that made her easy to be around. We'd grab lunch sometimes or chat about music while waiting for meetings to start, and I figured asking her to join me at a show wasn't crossing any lines. It was just 2 co-workers hanging out, right? Wrong. The night started off harmless enough. We met at this little dive bar near the venue, had a couple of beers, and swapped stories about terrible bosses and awkward office moments. She told me about the time she accidentally replied all to an email chain, complaining about someone who was, in fact, on the email chain. I told her about the time I tripped over a power cord during a presentation and took the projector down with me. We laughed, and honestly it felt good, easy, like we'd been friends for years instead of just a few months. By the time we got to the venue, the drinks were hitting just right. The band was loud, the crowd was rowdy, and we ended up standing way too close to each other, the kind of close where shoulders brush and no one moves away. Somewhere between the second and third song, she leaned in and said, "You're not as uptight as I thought you'd be." I laughed, but inside I was doing that mental calculation. The one where you weigh whether or not leaning in a little closer is a terrible idea. Spoiler alert, it was. But a couple more beers later, neither of us cared. After the show, we wandered back to her place. It was one of those spur-of-the-moment decisions that felt completely reasonable at the time. She lived nearby, and neither of us wanted to call it a night yet. We ended up in her living room, flipping through records and taking turns picking songs until one of us made the first move. I honestly don't remember who it was, probably her, but maybe me. All I know is that 1 minute we were talking, and the next we were making out like teenagers who'd just snuck out after curfew. We stumbled into her bedroom, shedding clothes along the way, and well, you get the idea. Everything seemed fine, great, even, until it wasn't. Afterward, we were lying there catching our breath when she reached over, grabbed a joint from her nightstand, and lit it. Now, I'm not opposed to a little post-hookup relaxation, but the second she took that first hit, I could tell something was off. Her face changed, eyes darting, jaw tightening, and then she sat straight up in bed like she'd just remembered something important. "I think I'm too high," she said, her voice already wavering. I sat up too, trying to gauge whether this was regular high or emergency high. "You okay?" I asked. "Nope," she said, already climbing out of bed and reaching for her robe. "I need a minute." And with that, she bolted to the bathroom, shutting the door so hard the frame rattled. At first, I figured she just needed to splash some water on her face or talk herself down in the mirror. I waited a few minutes, then a few more. After about 15 minutes, I knocked softly and asked if she was all right. "I'm fine," she called back, but her voice sounded anything but fine. So I waited some more, and waited, and waited. By the time we hit the 1-hour mark, I was starting to wonder if she'd climbed out the bathroom window to escape. I knocked again, this time a little louder. "You sure you're okay?" There was a long pause, and then she finally said, "I think you need to go." I blinked at the door, trying to process what I'd just heard. "Wait, what?" "I'm serious," she said, her voice muffled. "You should go." And that was it. No explanation, no further discussion. Just a disembodied voice telling me to leave. So I did. I gathered my clothes, got dressed in awkward silence, and let myself out of her apartment, trying not to trip over my own feet on the way. I stood outside for a second, wondering if I should text her to make sure she wasn't still locked in the bathroom, but ultimately decided against it. The next morning, I woke up with a splitting headache and a sinking feeling in my stomach. I grabbed my phone to check for any texts from her, maybe an apology or even just an explanation, but there was nothing. And then Monday rolled around. Walking into the office felt like stepping into a minefield. She was already at her desk when I arrived, typing furiously and avoiding eye contact like it was her full-time job. I tried to play it cool, said a casual hey as I passed by, but all I got in return was a quick nod and a morning. For the rest of the day, we both acted like nothing had happened. No one else in the office seemed to suspect anything, but I felt like every interaction with her was loaded with unspoken awkwardness. It didn't help that every time I saw her, all I could think about was that locked bathroom door and the muffled voice telling me to leave. Over the next few weeks, things slowly settled back into something resembling normal, but there was always this underlying tension that never quite went away. I have one that's more weird than it was terrible. It's a doozy. When I was 19, I was working at a shop in a less traveled part of downtown. It was winter time, and my hometown is dead in the winter, so there was very little foot traffic. I was working alone on a Saturday night. A cute backpacker guy came into the shop. At the time, I considered myself to have hippie leanings, so he was just my type. Yeah, I had one long skirt and wore jewelry I bought from street vendors. That's as far as that went. Totally pretentious and naive. We got to chatting, and he said he'd just gotten into town and was looking for suggestions on fun things to do. I directed him to the nearest nightclubs on the next block. He left, and I went about my business. He came back some time later to tell me that the clubs weren't really his scene, and invited me to hang out with him at his grandparents' place, which was on a lakefront property. I agreed to it like an idiot, all excited and flattered that this hot scruffy guy had asked me out, thinking it was romantic or some shit. Well, I go there after I close the shop down at 10 p.m. I get to the address he had given me, and it's a nice enough place, but there are no grandparents to be seen. I wondered briefly if he had just broken into some random property, but he seemed familiar with a few key things. I stayed. He made me craft dinner, which was pretty cool. Then we sat inside and he began talking about all the occult/Illuminati symbols on the American dollar bill, that everything in the US is a giant conspiracy run by them, etc., etc. At this point, I was feeling uncomfortable. He told me about some experience he had in Tofino, a small, hippie-ish town on Vancouver Island, where he was on the beach and apparently saw hippies coming out of the forest who drew a big circle in the sand that they danced around and chanted in by moon/candlelight. Honestly, this one could have been true. He told me about some spooky supernatural experiences he had in Stanley Park in Vancouver that apparently cemented his belief in ghosts. Then, the kicker, he told me he could see auras. So far, all of this could be just some hippie/free spirit guy talking about his beliefs, yes? But he said that he believed that he was descended from the wizard Merlin since Merlin had a gray aura, and so did he. He believed he was a wizard and had some kind of powers, and that's why all these weird things kept happening to him. I had to go. I told him I had to work early. Then I get outside, and it was the first snowstorm of the year. Hooray! I could barely get my car up the driveway, but finally did. No way was I going back inside or considering staying the night. At the time, I thought he was weird, but was more worried about driving in the snow or waking up my parents after being out so late. He texted me once or twice after that, but I kept telling him I was busy. I should have known better. Way better. That was so dangerous. Nobody knew where I was, so I was extremely lucky that he was harmless. When I tell the story to friends, they laugh about my date with a wizard, but I shudder to think of how dumb I was. It's more about that than about some kooky dude. Matched with a gorgeous woman, and we got to chatting straight away. We had great convo and no trouble genuinely making each other laugh. She was very responsive and seemed super interested, so was I. So unsurprisingly, plans for a date quickly ensued. So far so good. This was just after the last round of lockdowns had ended where I live, You needed to book just about everywhere, and places were being strict about charging for canceled bookings and allotting 2-hour table time limits. Took the risk and booked for drinks. I show up on time, waiter takes me to the table. I order a drink and chill thinking she's going to be a little late based on the last TXT exchange. 15 minutes and I get a text saying she's struggling to find parking. Not a problem, no stress, see you when you get here, I respond. 15 minutes later the follow-up, I'm just around the corner, TXT lands. At this stage I've finished the drink I ordered, and the waiter keeps coming round, reminding me I've got limited time on the booking, and asking if I want another drink or to order food. I turn down the drink, not wanting to be half-cut, when slash if my date shows, and don't order food either. Waiter looks very annoyed. I'm thinking about settling the bill and getting on my merry way. 15 minutes later, a total of 45 minutes late, date finally shows. I'm annoyed, but she walks in looking smoking hot, looking even better than her very attractive pics, and apologizes profusely, which lowers the irritation to a simmer that is quickly forgotten. She did make a remark about how she had to take time to get pretty for me, that kinda irked me, but again smoking hot, and besides that quip actually quite charming, so I let it slide. My date orders a cocktail, I get a beer, and she downs the thing before I've gotten a quarter of the way through my beer, and immediately orders another one, and slams that one down before I can finish my beer. Remember, she drove to this date. Waiter does his time, keep thing looking even more annoyed, and we collectively realize not enough time to eat, so I settle the bill and my date, and I decide to go elsewhere. At this point, I'm pretty much sober, but I can see slam him down cocktail Sue is in no state to drive. Turns out she parked her car about a block away, which begs the question why it took her so long to get there if she was parked around the CNR. But Waitev's issue now is she can't drive and will 100% get a ticket if she leaves her car where it is. I'm a little amused at her plight, but I offer a solution. Find a long-term park for the car, then it won't an issue for the evening. She agrees this is sensible, but she's definitely over the limit, so I drive her car into an overnight-type parking lot with a reasonable weekend rate and think crisis averted. Little did I know what would follow. We kick on to a few other spots round town, and by this point the city is heaving, and we're progressively both getting drunker and drunker, but having an absolute blast. End up at club-type spot dancing, getting handsy and lip-locking with each other. Never had a first date quite so raucous, but this woman is hilarious and good times are being had by all. Then things suddenly turn. She takes a phone call, her face visibly darkens, and she's absolutely seething. Apparently it's someone she did a favor for that turned on her, and she says, I can be the sweetest, kindest person in the world, but if you cross me I'll destroy you, flushed face. We're both quite drunk, but I can see this line of talk ain't leading to anything good, so I try to change the subject to no avail. She's ranting and getting more and more worked up. People start to stare and I hold her hand and gently try to calm her down. She flips the script and yells, don't fucking touch me. Mind you, we'd been a hell of a lot more intimate already by then than hand holding, so I'm completely thrown. Time freezes as literally everyone turns to look at what must look like an abusive spouse me. Thankfully she spots the look of shock/horror on my face, quickly grabs my hand, apologizes, and tries to snuggle into me. I'm deafened by the alarm bells ringing in my head, and all I can think about is how to pull the pin on this date ASAP. I say I'm leaving, get up, walk out, she chases after me. She's now beside herself, emotional, and I say we're clearly both way too drunk and we should end the date. I offer to pay for her Uber home, and she mutters something about getting a hotel room for the night, as she needs her car first thing in the morn. I tell her that that's a good idea, but that I won't be joining her in the hotel room. I'm going home, thanks very much. She then flies into a rage, and demands I help her get her car from parking garage because she's too drunk to do it. I'm like, lady, I'm just as drunk as you. No goddamn way I'm getting behind the wheel of anything right now. Besides, you don't need your car if you Uber home or get a hotel room. She calls me every name in the book, and I walk away, call an Uber, go home, laughing to myself about my date with Satan's little helper. I receive a barrage of abusive TXTs and attempts at emotional blackmail. How can you just leave me like this, which I ignore. Get home, turn my phone off, and crash. Next morning I wake up to a video message from her. She went and got her car and drove it home, y'all. The recording was her gunning it down the highway while filming and taunting me. Sweet baby Jesus, what is wrong with you? Was all I could reply. About 6 hours later she's blowing up my phone, apologizing, saying how she's embarrassed and ashamed, got too drunk, and isn't normally like this. I tell her she's playing with fire with what she did, and that she could have in a moment destroyed her life, or worse, someone else's, with her craziness. She agrees. I stop talking to her. Really hope she got help. But yeah, this is the craziest date I've ever been on. Long, but I got this courtesy of OkCupid. I was 24 and from school, had been messaging this cute girl who could actually hold a conversation really well. So after I got home in December, we decided to meet up. 7:00 p.m. Show up at her place. She isn't 120 pounds heavier than her picture, doesn't have a beard or Adam's apple, and hasn't axe murdered me yet. Chemistry is great, and we actually start making out before I pull out of my parking space. So far so good. OkCupid, you da bomb. 7:15 in the car. Things are fine. She's talking a lot about her modeling job, which is cool. Just finished finals in med school. Anything that isn't an enzyme or nerve circuit is welcome. 7:30, arrive at ice rink and race each other inside. This is fun. Literally sprint in to see who can get ice skates first. 7:35, inside, and she's still going about her local modeling career and all the free things the vendors and designers give her. Thrifty cool. She hasn't asked anything about me, but whatever. She's cute, and I don't think she has a penis. 8:45, been skating for a while. I now know about the process of applying runway makeup, the time constraints and approximations of changing outfits depending on the number of pieces, and how to adjust hip tilt and swing during a catwalk if your clothing piece is top-heavy versus has a long train. I now know every cost approximation of at least 12 different clothing pieces from 3 designers I have never heard of. 8:50, she can't talk if she's eating. I suggest we get food. I don't know the area, so she inquires the first thing about me of the night. Yes, I do like Mexican. Personal thought, Mexican like tacos, should be casual and nice for a first date. 9:00, we arrive at the place. This is not Taco Bell or Chipotle. 40 feet high wooden vaulted ceilings with hanging sheer fabric for ambience, and the swankiest fucking bar I've never seen. I read Cristal on the neck of the display bottles propped about. Isn't that the shit rappers sing about? 9:03, sitting down. She's been bragging for a bit that despite being a model, she has never done cocaine. Waitress gives me a warm, moist hand towel to wipe off my hands as I sit down. I'm wondering if I'm in a strange music video. Fuck, the prices are steep. I'll just have a soda and a salad. She knows everything on the menu by name and what it should be paired with. She's been here a few times. I wonder if with other guys. 9:30, I would really like some cocaine. 10:20, Michael Kors ain't got shit on me for knowledge of the fashion industry. 10:30, I have no idea what she ordered, but the bill is $105 plus tip. She asks if we should go and I say yes. She makes no attempt to pull out her wallet, so I bite the tab, trying to conceal my pissedness. Should have ordered more than one drink. 10:40, not too impressed with the date, but I walk her to the door. She asks if I want to come in. I'm not used to dating after 2 long relationships, but I know this is a good sign, and I get excited and accept. So in we go. 10:41, I meet her mother, in a bathrobe, completely unfazed by my presence. She asks if I know how to fix a light socket. 10:47, light socket is fixed. 10:50 in her room, score. I've seen this in movies before. 11:10, she has taken me through every lotion and perfume and tin of makeup and brush on her vanity, and told me the brand, the list price, and how much she actually got it for. 11:20, she is almost finished telling me the brand, location of purchase, and price of every shirt, skirt, pair of pants, and jacket in her closet. She is upset that her friend stole a bracelet from her 2 weeks ago. She wonders if I would help her look for it. Haven't gotten laid in a long time, yes. 11:35, she is literally crying, with tears down her cheeks, because I could not find the stolen bracelet behind, under, in her dresser/vanity/bathroom/bed/closet/nightstand/carpet. If it was stolen, why did she ask me to look for it in her room? 11:40, she has stopped crying and suggests we watch a movie. Good, I need to mentally check out for a minute. 11:45, pay-per-view, or something, Evil Cabin Zombies in the Woods Dead 27. 12:00 am, extensive commentary on the superior quality of acting begins and ensues for the duration of the movie, but she says she has a knot in her back and wants me to massage it out. I accept this responsibility. 12:30, her shirt is off, and she is dead set on me massaging out a very specific knot on her left shoulder, which does not exist. Whatever. Apparently the special effects of the movie should have won a Tony Award or something, I don't know. 1:00-ish movie ends. My arms are getting sore, been kissing her sensually for a while. Have not been able to get her to A, shut up B, turn over C, actively engage said kissies. 1:03, sequel to Monsters in the Aliens Woods homiciding stereotyped sluts, /cast with Murder 41 begins. My lips are super tingly, from the $72 lotion purchased at Macy's 2012 Groundhog's Day sale, that I've been using. Still massaging. 1:40, can T feel arms or lips at all? 2:00, she starts participating in the making out stuff, and politely tells me that for religious reasons she is saving her virginity until marriage. I completely understand. When it comes to faith beliefs like that, I respect whatever choices you make, cool, no hassle, and we start fooling around. 2:30, I am excited. I've finished her off about 2 or 3 times. I feel like a champ, but I am still completely clothed and have not been touched in any way, shape, or form. As I am still being all sexy-like, I casually say, "What about me?" 2:31, she informs me that the bathroom is right over there, and tells me I can take care of myself in the shower. I think I'll just hold it. 2:45, we've been silent, cuddling. Hey, this is nice, I love cuddling, she is comfy, and she's not talking, this is good. 2:50 am, out of silence, she whispers, "I see demons." 2:52 yours are yellow. 2:52 and 12 seconds, I shit myself. 3:00, I learn that my demons are angry, and she is scared of them. Don't worry, I am too. She tells me that she has been exorcised on 2 occasions, and it's helped a lot. I don't inquire as to how much, precisely. 3:05, I try to be supportive because this doesn't seem like the kind of thing you just go around telling everybody, and more or less keep my mouth shut. God, I want to try cocaine. 3:10, sleep for her. Another hour of being stiff as a board and scared before I pass out. 9:00, her mother knocks and I, all 6 feet 5 inches 220 pounds of me, attempts to hide under the blankets. Mother comes in and nonchalantly tells her that they are going to a friend's house for dinner. Asks if the bearded guy under the blanket wants to come. I decline. I have to go return some overdue videotapes. 9:15, I leave to return some overdue videotapes. No, we didn't go on a second date. We had a pretty typical, anticlimactic dispersion from each other, and haven't talked since, but it's okay, because apparently my demons can keep me company. Had an OkCupid account for a few years. I would occasionally get on there, mostly when drunk, and message people or check and see if I had messages. One day this decent enough looking girl messaged me, and we got to talking. It was just the usual get to know you kind of stuff, like what do you do for a living, and what are your hobbies, etc. I told the girl that I worked night shift at the local Walmart, and at the time it didn't seem that giving her this kind of info would backfire in a way, but I was wrong. We continued messaging for a few days, getting to know each other. She was a school teacher and was a bit older than me. Being that I had a minimum wage job, I didn't really see much of a future there between us, and our conversations were growing a bit stale. So me being the asshole, I decided the best course of action would be to just stop talking to her completely instead of telling her I wasn't interested. A few days go by, and she messaged me a few times, but I, again being an asshole, did not reply. Then I started to get messages that were a bit hostile, asking me why I wasn't talking to her, and why I didn't want to be her friend, and things like that. So I decided to continue ignoring her like the good person that I am. A few more days go by, and then one night at about 2 a.m. while I'm working, a coworker comes up to me and says that some girl was asking for me. At the time I didn't put 2 and 2 together, so I just shrugged it off. Then the following few work nights, my coworkers keep telling me that this girl is coming in looking for me. How she didn't find me by just walking around the store, I don't know. But I finally remember that I had told this girl where I work at. Then the next night she finds me. She had come in with a guy and confronted me about ignoring her on OkCupid. She wasn't being hostile or anything when she asked, so I just told her that I had been busy and hadn't been on in a while. So awkwardly she said, "Well, okay, just message me when you get home." At this point I was a bit freaked out, but I stuck to my ways and did not message her hoping that she would just leave me alone. But of course this only made things worse. She started showing up looking for me on my days off, asking my coworkers what my schedule was and things like that. The next time I had work, she was there at around 3 a.m., again with a random guy that was different than the last, and again asking me why I had not messaged her, But this time she was a bit more hostile, saying what kind of person does this to someone, and things like that. But I told her the same thing again, that I had been busy and had not gotten on the website in a while. And then as always I continued to ignore her messages. After a few times of hearing that she had shown up looking for me again, and me being afraid of getting stabbed to death by this crazy chick in the parking lot, it finally stopped. She stopped coming to my work and stopped messaging me. In the end, all my hard work and perseverance paid off, and she moved on to stalking someone new. Moral of the story: ignore your problems, and they will eventually disappear. A few years ago, I met up with a somewhat older date, gay man 45 and me being 25. We went for coffee and talked for a couple of hours. It was going well, and the conversation flowed. He invited me back to his place to smoke from his volcano vape, and to fool around if the mood struck. I was down. Volcano vaping is hard to come by and way fun, and this guy was hot and cool. We do our stuff. Another hour or two later, after all was said and done, we're chilling on his couch finishing up a discussion when he gets a knock at his door. He looks confused, clearly not expecting a visitor. He goes and answers the door, in clear view of where I am sitting in the living room, and it's a cute guy who looks to also be around my age. They have a brief exchange that I couldn't hear with low murmuring, and he waves by and closes the door. He turns back and I raise my eyebrow like, "What's up?" And he candidly tells me it's his son's best friend, who he's low-key been sleeping with since he was 21. As I wasn't looking for anything serious, and he knew that through our conversations, he told me about all of the nice, cute guys that have come to him over the years for chill conversation in an open-minded environment with good weed and good sex/head. He makes the first move sometimes, as he did messaging me on Tinder, but he said many guys hit on him first and repeatedly come back to him for feel-good hookups. And I could see why guys enjoy his company and pleasures. He was easy to talk to, didn't hog convo, intelligent, worldly and traveled, open-minded, and is a generous lover as well as giving with his weed. Also super gorgeous and fit. He is previously married, now a bachelor, well off, lives in a nice neighborhood, and his small business he built from the ground up afforded him a nice lifestyle. This guy was awesome and genuine. Glad I got to meet and know him. He told me stories of how he helped some guys by being an ear and supportive with their troubling coming out stories, or abusive homophobic parent stories, and the like, offering places to stay, and to help them find employment if needed. I hang out and hook up with him a couple of more times. I eventually move out of state. I come back a year or so later to visit people. I hit him up to see how he's been, and we meet up for coffee. It had only been maybe a year and a half since I had seen him, and my immediate thought was, this man looks rough and like he aged rapidly. Come to find out that he has acute leukemia and doesn't have much time left. He told me he accepts the end and had lived a great life. He has an amazing son, friends, and generally good support around him. Seeing how beat down he looked physically, it was good hearing him speak on those things. It showed the strong character in him that I had gotten to know during our previous times together. We hugged and exchanged some heartfelt words. Such a beautiful, kind, and generous soul. Last I heard, he passed with friends and family around. I'll always remember him. I matched with a girl using the highly successful and scientifically proven dating act we find ourselves currently on. We'll call this match Jen. Jen seemed nice, lolled at my shitty humor, talked good and proper, and asked when we might be meeting up. I suggested a place. She told me when to be there. Onwards, towards my record book we raced. I went into this with zero expectations. It was Tinder, after all. But my choice of a wine bar had been met with overwhelming approval, so I thought maybe something positive might come out of it. Then I saw Jen, and I wanted something to come out of it. She looked substantially better in person than on the app. A reverse catfish, if you will. She had come straight from work and still carried the aura of being focused and unstoppable. Something one would expect from an early 20s NYC girl who was still taking on the world and not yet driven down by defeat or cynicism. Except Jen was 28 and might be interested in me, so it was even better. When she looked over at me, a metamorphosis occurred. Her professional demeanor transformed from a defense attorney honing in on a lead witness error-filled testimony to a child who just received that Christmas puppy they wanted after all other presents had been exhausted. I actually had butterflies in my stomach. Jen and I do a friendly hug, and the first thing I notice is her perfume. I don't know what it was, but she smelled amazing. I get an image in my head courtesy of Hollywood. Us laying in bed post-sex like carefree actors with perfect hair, great lighting, and a lack of towels required to clean up certain bodily fluids. We sit as the server lays down the dinner menus, says he'll be right back, and with a glance at my watch, the clock officially begins, 8:12 p.m. I only know because she had said 8, and I have an irrational fear of being stood up. I needed to verify I was overanalyzing that thought. I'm already a quarter into my drink, having arrived around 8, and needed something to calm myself. Jen peruses the wine list while we engage in the initial pleasantries. How nice she looks, adventures on the MTA to get here, and other small talk. I browse the dinner menu, trying to figure out what I can stomach against my newly arisen, alcohol-resistant jitters. I spot my food of choice, a duck confit salad, and close the menu as Jen flags down our server and orders a Riesling. So far, so good. After her order, she leans into the table, showing some eagerness to talk. Jen has a hell of a smile and brightens up almost on cue as I ask about what she does. The small talk turns to worthwhile discussion as her drink gets dropped off. She tells the server she's ready to order. Apparently, she's already been here and knows what she wants without having to look at the menu. Jen orders a braised pork dish, hands the menu to the server, and sips her wine. Server looks at me, and I order my duck confit salad. Jen, noticeably, has a moment where I think the wine went down the wrong pipe. She recovers fast, and instead of coughing, she's just staring at me with this look of disdain. At this point, I'll mention that my employment consists of public relations for an organization that is not well liked. A day I perform well at work is a day where I am able to be in a very stressful, often hostile, environment while staying together, thinking on my feet, and getting the message out. It happens frequently, and I do my job rather well. I say this not to talk myself up, but to prove just how disastrous the following was. "Eh, salad?" I want to say she bellowed it, but really, I was just so caught off guard it came off as loud as a bullhorn. The server, and myself, not sure what to make of this, look at her with confusion on our faces. His quickly disappears into the menu he's now holding. I reply, "It's got duck in it." Years of experience as an orator are on full display in this crowning moment as my rhetoric resonates across the table. "A salad? Do you know how that will make me look as I'm shoveling braised pork into my mouth?" The server realizes that the table near the bar, which didn't flag him down, suddenly needs his attention, and he'll be right back to see if we need to change our order. Again, I do PR. This is where I work best, on the defensive. I look her dead in the face and say, "Is this a body image thing or something?" She loses it. I can't even comprehend what she's saying, because I'm so mortified at the ignorance I just blurted out. The barrage of fuck yous, assholes, and other obscenities hit their mark, killing my stomach butterflies where they flutter. I start picking up that I'm making her look like a pig, which, consequently, I ask what I just ordered. I am literally speechless. She and everyone else in this place are just staring at me. Maybe us, I don't know. I finally get the urge to speak up and apologize profusely for making her feel that way. I tell her I will order something else, we can start over, and this is just a silly little. Did you just fucking say, silly? That was it. I was done, preparing for wine to be thrown in my face. Instead, she just stands up, grabs her bag, gives me the finger, and just yells out, "F-U-C-K. You." The restaurant is dead silent as we all watch her leave. She kicks a chair as she was leaving and yelled again as, I assume, she broke her toe. More silence, except for one guy just trying to silence his laughter a few tables away as his companion is saying, "OMG, stop. That's not funny. I would die." I agreed at the time, but now I think it's one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me. I just sat there for a moment and noticed the server standing at my table looking down at me. I glance at my watch, 8:29 p.m. I offer a pleasant smile and ordered the duck confit salad, but please not the braised pork. I was likely dining alone that night. So I had my salad, it was fucking amazing, another glass of my red, her Riesling, and a pretty decent dinner. The server tried to comp 2 of the glasses of wine, but I just tipped him out the comps because he did nothing wrong. I don't know if it was all serious or she was just fucking around with me. She unmatched me sometime after she left, and that was that. So there it is. I wrote quite a bit of this on the train this morning, pre-coffee, post forgetting my Kindle, presently being stuck because of a police investigation at a station. Hope you enjoyed it. My scariest date was when I went out to lunch on New Year's Day with a new guy. A day or two before we went out, we were talking about our NYE plans. He was going to be working delivering pizzas. I was going to be at a family party, so neither of us were going to get a NYE kiss. So when I got to Noodles and Company for lunch on January 1st, he was ready. He met me at my car, which I didn't like because I was putting the finishing touches on my lip gloss. When I stepped out, he planted a kiss on me, tongue and all. All I could do was laugh. My feet weren't even planted yet. I fell over. During lunch, he proceeded to tell me about a mouth infection he had recently which he'd got from his ex-girlfriend. Then he gave me details about how he had to take pills to produce saliva. To this day, I still have no idea what the infection was. Never heard of it before or after. Then he said, "I really want to kiss you again." To which I said a no. I went home and looked for mouthwash to gargle but didn't have any. So I grabbed my brother's Skol vodka out of the cabinet and used that. Thankfully, I did not get a mouth infection and I never saw him again. I met a woman on Tinder, and after a few days of messaging back and forth, we decided to go see a movie. She was cute, funny, and seemed normal, or at least as normal as anyone can seem over text. The conversation flowed easily, and I figured why not. A casual movie date sounded low pressure, and honestly, I was just glad to get off the app and meet someone in real life. When we were deciding on the movie, she said it had to be rated PG. I laughed, assuming she was joking or maybe just preferred light-hearted comedies. I even made some sarcastic comment about how we could sneak into an R-rated one afterward if we were feeling rebellious. She didn't really respond to that, but I brushed it off. Some people just like keeping things PG. No big deal. That assumption was shattered the moment she showed up, with a 5-year-old kid in tow. To say I was caught off guard would be an understatement. I stood there in the theater lobby, trying to process what was happening as she waved me over and introduced me to her son like this was the most natural thing in the world. Meanwhile, I was mentally scrolling through our conversations, trying to figure out if I had somehow missed the part where she mentioned she was bringing her kid on our first date. Spoiler, I hadn't. Now, I'm not against single moms. I actually admire them. Parenting is hard, and dating while parenting, even harder. But maybe, just maybe, a heads up that this wasn't going to be a one-on-one situation would have been nice. Instead, I was standing there in my date night outfit, trying to figure out how I'd suddenly become the third wheel on someone's family outing. Before I could even decide how to react, she hit me with, "Oh, by the way, can you grab some popcorn for him? He loves the extra butter." Excuse me? I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that there's a child involved, and now I'm supposed to foot the snack bill? Don't get me wrong, I'm not cheap. If the date had been going well, or if I'd known what I was walking into, I wouldn't have thought twice about buying popcorn. But under these circumstances, it felt less like a date and more like I'd accidentally signed up for babysitting duty. Still, not wanting to make a scene, I bought the popcorn, and a soda, and some candy, because once you're in, you're in. The movie itself was exactly what you'd expect from a PG flick: animated characters, slapstick humor, and just enough plot to keep a 5-year-old entertained. I spent most of it sneaking side glances at her, trying to figure out if she thought this was going well. She seemed completely at ease, laughing at all the jokes and chatting with her kid like this was just another Saturday afternoon. Meanwhile, I sat there sipping my drink, wondering if this was some kind of test to see if I could handle dad mode right out of the gate. After the movie, she thanked me for coming and said her son had a great time. I smiled, nodded, and made some generic comment about how it was fun. Then I got the hell out of there. Later, she texted to say she had a really nice time and hoped we could do it again soon. I stared at my phone for a long time, trying to figure out how to let her down gently. In the end, I told her she seemed great, but I didn't think we were looking for the same thing. Worst date? The one where I ignored basic internet safety protocol one, the coffee date. So long story, I'm in college on OKC, I get a massage from this guy, and it turns out that we knew each other from high school. He'd been a senior when I was a sophomore, and we'd had a Photoshop class together. So yeah, I remembered him too. And he's all, "I've had a crush on you for such a long time. It's so cool that I found you again." So that's flattering. And he asks if I like to play video games, and I'm like, heck yeah, so he invites me back to his place for video games. Thunder cracks in the background. It was pissing down rain, so he offered to come get me in his car off campus. So I'm like, sure, why not? And he comes and picks me up in this flashy as fuck red 2-seater. And he's every neckbeard stereotype you can imagine. Just a giant guy, both fat and tall, sparse beard all over his chins. I think he kissed my knuckles at some point. Well, I know I'm not exactly stunning either, so I'm like, alright, we're just going to play some video games, it'll be cool. On the way back to his place, he calls his old Subaru, which I vaguely remembered a pussy wagon, and talked about how he had traded up for the flashy red car we were in. This is a turn-off to me because really? If you have a car that runs and could potentially drive a bunch of dogs around, you do not need a flashier car with no cargo or friend space. We're about a half-mile from campus in the nice apartments there, and he brings me up to his studio. He's all you want to get high, takes me to his bathroom, and shows me the most complicated fancy beaker-style bong I had seen up to that date. He bragged that it's like $1,000 top-of-the-line bong. Again with the unimpressive money spending. I had like half a tokay, and he finishes the bowl. We kiss for a bit, and I'm like, alright, I can do kissing. But then he wants to take a shower with me, so I doge out into the room and ask about video games. Weren't we going to play video games? So he follows me, but he's obviously too stoned for Mario Golf. So he asks me to pick a movie, and I choose Life of Brian, because it's a good movie I hadn't seen in a while. So we chill on the couch, and he proceeds to try and basically steal second base, and imply that, hey, he lives in a studio, and his bed is right there. I mean, we could go over there and be comfortable. I played dumb, but then we couldn't see the movie, I said, and he huffed, and went back to tit squeezing. The groping would have been almost okay, but he for whatever reason decided that instead of the classic up and under, to instead go down the neck of my t-shirt. So he's kind of choking me in addition to pinching my nipple in the mistaken impression that this is turning me on. So I tell him to stop, and he gets all huffy, but he stops, so we go back to watching the movie. And then he tries it again, down the neck of the shirt and everything. This happens a couple of times. So then I stand up. I say something like, I think I should home now. As soon as I get up, he bursts into these blubbery, awful tears, and he's trying to tell me something about how it's been so long, and could I just stay? It's raining, he'd totally drive me. And did I have about 350? So about that time I realized he was about 500 feet tall, and from the Paleolithic era. So I smile weakly, tell him, I've had a lovely time, but I really must get going. Cue more and stronger crying, exunt pencil ears. I walked home in the rain, called my sister as I did so in case he followed me, and took what amounts to basically a rape shower to wash the feel of his hands off me. I've been thinking about it today because I just got back last night from a second date with a guy who seemed like he was mad at me and decided against a third date for my not being much of a risk taker, and I assume it's because I didn't want to go back to his apartment after our first date. If you're reading this, Drew, and I know you're a Redditor, then now you know why I'm a little wary of being fucking date raped. The only thing that saved me in the above story is that he got himself too high to restrain me effectively. Had he wanted to, he could have wrecked me. Also, despite my high and freaky sex drive, I don't bang people I've known less than 24 hours.